Cool Figure TV. Revolutionary salute. Revolutionary salute. Like, share, subscribe. Welcome to the House of Revolution. You know, I'm your humble host. The Yalta revolution in Zelensky has shocked the world, y'all. 200 billion missing? Whew. That's money laundering. Before we get into that, I'm going to need y'all to wipe y'all feet. That means hit the like button. Like, share, subscribe, support the platform, y'all. Well, we already knew this. Salute, revolutionary salute, family. We already knew. Everybody from the House of Revolution, the core figures, y'all already knew money laundering went on in Ukraine. Joe Biden thinking he finna get up out of there with that 100. Well, how much money did you steal, Joe Biden? Because Zelensky say he don't got it. Zelensky said the U.S. was steady talking about this money they're sending that never showed up. Zelensky's trying to make a side deal with Trump. He knew Trump and the Republicans asked for an audit. So before they bump Zelensky off and say he stole it, Zelensky came out today and said we never got it. Joe Biden and the Democrats are in big trouble, and this is a big scandal. The war was about money laundering, and Zelensky, knowing the pressure's on, came out today and said we only got 75 billion. All that 200 billion they sent, we get none of that.
Але коли говорять, що Україна під час війни отримала 200 мільярдів на підтримку армії, тощо, це неправда. Я не знаю, де всі ці гроші.
Hey, we got 75, but they say they sent 170 something, 200 something. We didn't get that. 58% of this USAID never seen Ukraine. But we know that. Okay, we didn't read all that. We heard Zelensky say that at the beginning. Let's get into some more details. Over 100 billion of your hard-earned taxpayer money, because y'all work hard. Y'all not sitting on y'all ass. Shit, if you don't work, you don't eat. Well, guess what? Zelensky say 100 billion or more, that's up in smoke. The Democrats, the champion of this war, shit, they pocketed that, especially the big guy. Y'all remember the big guy Hunter Biden was talking about? Why do you think Joe Biden gave everybody pardons in his damn family? All of them was in on this Ukraine scandal. That's a fact.
Our top focus on gravitas, one of the countries that is deeply dependent on American aid. We're talking about Ukraine. It cannot account for roughly $200 billion in U.S. aid. You heard that right. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has reportedly said that he has no idea where most of the $200 billion in American aid went. Zelensky has reportedly said Washington has provided Kiev with just over $75 billion in military and other aid. He added that he has no idea where U.S. President Donald Trump's estimate of $200 billion came from or where it might have disappeared to. So the question being, where did the money go? It's a real mystery, perhaps. Since the war started in 2022, the U.S. Congress has authorized roughly $175 billion for Ukraine. Yet, Zelensky insists that he has seen little of that cash. So what happened to the money? What explains this disparity? Is America lying? Or is Zelensky hiding something? Perhaps the deeply entrenched corruption in his country. Well, Trump, who has been highly critical of Biden's magnanimity towards Ukraine, has argued that NATO and EU, and I'm quoting here, equalize their contributions with US's support. Last month, Trump had said, and I quote, "We are in there for $200 billion more than the EU. I mean, what are we, stupid?" U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance also mentioned the figure as early as last July, saying, and I quote, "We have now spent $200 billion. What is the goal? What are we trying?"
You didn't spend $200 billion. You acted like you spending that money. You and those criminals in Congress and the Defense Department kept the money. And it's plenty of times on video, like Lindsay, they said that's what they was doing. We're sending them old weapons. We're keeping the money to revitalize. This was a money laundering scheme of outrageous proportions. When you go back and see all these criminals who got rich by the billions, talking about the poor Ukrainians as they was getting them slaughtered. We got to keep them in the fight. I mean, they knew every time Ukraine gets to losing different territory, different pieces of territory, they come to us or demand more because that money is going to help them fight back. Imagine them keeping the money. They never gave a damn about helping Ukraine fight back. This is a shame. But Zelensky, for that coat, he sniffed that good raw Colombian Peruvian flake and told the truth.
Trying to accomplish. Well, according to several media reports, Zelensky has said that Ukraine never received even half of that sum. He reportedly said that Ukraine received about $76 billion in aid, but not $200 billion.
You know what this is all about? They just told Zelensky that he had to, a dictator, that he had to have elections in March or May. Zelensky said, oh, you want me to have elections? Well, guess what? You stole over $100 billion from your own people. And that's exactly what he's saying. Let's not mince words here. Zelensky's saying Joe Biden and the U.S. stole $100-some billion from their citizens, pretended like it went to Ukraine. He's telling you we never got it.
But since 2022, the U.S. Congress has reportedly authorized roughly $175 billion for Ukraine. A major portion of that funding has reportedly gone to American industries and various U.S. government activities related to the war in Ukraine.
Disgusting.
Well, according to Germany's Karl Institute, the U.S. had allocated approximately $92 billion in financial and military aid to Ukraine, while EU countries and the UK had allocated $131 billion.
War's a racket.
This is the data till October 2024. If what Zelensky is saying is true, it only...
This is only the beginning. Ukraine, I told y'all this, Ukraine is collapsing. Putin is finna be in power. They finna get all the files. You think this is something? This is only the beginning that they shook the Americans down for a war. If they wanted Ukraine to even almost have a chance, which they wouldn't, you could have sent every penny, they still would have lost. But how can they beat Russia if you're not even sending them the money to fight? This is crazy.
Only adds fuel to the firestorm of corruption in Ukraine. Just last month, in an interview with U.S. podcaster Lex Fridman, Zelensky said that Ukraine has not received even half of the $177 billion that was allocated by the U.S. He has rather implied that this situation may be linked to corruption or lobbying by American companies. While admitting to the problem of corruption, Zelensky noted that Kyiv is working hard to combat it through what he described as the most complex anti-corruption system in Europe. However, clearly, it is not enough. Corruption remains the top domestic issue for Ukrainians, and it is the most acute problem among all European countries. In fact, according to the annual ranking of corruption...
Why do you think they picked the most corrupt country in Europe to run this scam? Because they knew people didn't give a fuck about no million of their citizens being killed if they was going to cash in off of it. But what they never thought was they would be this humiliated. They actually thought the big dog U.S. and NATO could at least keep Putin back. They didn't know they was going to lose trillions of dollars playing with the U.S. Oh, you're going to lose more than that playing with Putin now because the U.S. can't save you. And this was a money laundering scam.
By Transparency International, Ukraine has scored poorly for decades, and there are various reasons for it, including slow post-Soviet changes in Ukraine's economy, frequent shifts in ruling groups, and also a deeply entrenched habit of seeking easy solutions to everyday issues. This high level of corruption is among the reasons why EU and NATO have not yet accepted Ukraine's NATO membership. For Western governments, the fight against corruption has been stated as a top priority. And so, since the start of the Russia-Ukraine war, scandals related to the military have surfaced, including price gouging on food supplies for the armed forces, overpriced winter gear, and an unfulfilled contract for mortar shells. These are serious crimes, especially as they affect the lives of those fighting for their country. Well, the war has only complicated the issue further, worsening the situation. This brings us back to the current situation. The lack of clarity on the missing US aid and where the $200 billion have gone is rather shocking, given the gravity of the situation and the unchecked corruption. The question being, can Kiev's allies truly ever trust Ukraine?
Indian lady, stop. I know you don't want the Americans to sanction your little program. America stole $100 billion from their own citizens, not Ukraine. It ain't about not being able to trust Ukraine. Oh, they trusted Ukraine to keep this quiet. In Ukraine, Zelensky turned on him because he's trying to make a side deal with Trump, get Trump a little information so he won't be whacked by the CIA.
Namaskar. Hello and welcome to P Guru's channel. I'm your host Sri Iyer. What is happening? Zelensky has come out with an explosive statement. And before we talk about the circumstances and where that money could be, let us listen to this small video conversation that Zelensky had. Let's take a look at the video, please.
Дивіться, я коли чую, і раніше чув, і сьогодні ми чуємо від Сполучених Штатів Америки, що Америка дала Україні сотні мільярдів, 177, якщо сказати більш точно. Така звучала точна цифра, яку підтримували або голосував Конгрес, тощо різні організації. Дивіться, я як президент воюючої країни вам говорю, ми отримали більше 75. Тобто 100 мільярдів з цих 177 або 200, говорять навіть деякі люди, ми ніколи не отримували. І це важливо. Бо ми говоримо про конкретні речі, бо ми отримали це не грошима, а зброєю. Ми зброю отримали на 70 з чимось мільярдів. Є навчання, тренування, є додатковий транспорт, є не тільки ціну на зброю, були гуманітарні програми, соціальні тощо. Але коли говорять, що Україна під час війни отримала 200 мільярдів на підтримку армії тощо, це неправда. Я не знаю, де всі ці гроші.
All right. So this is Ukraine's arguably the WTF moment. Where the funds? So he's wondering loud of the aid. This is just the aid part, okay? $177 billion of aid that was supposed to have been given by the United States to Ukraine. He says only 75 billion ended up there. So the question is, where is the remaining $102 billion? Again, viewers, this is just the aid part. Aid is something where you don't have to return the money. What about, there are other things such as loans given to Ukraine. Then there are also guarantees given to Ukraine, where it is believed that Deep State has benefited hugely because they have given money to the Ukrainian government in exchange for guarantees of being able to access their fertile land. So this is a huge story in itself. I'm not going to talk about that. This is a black and white.
This is a huge story that they're not telling in the United States. Zelensky comes out. This is not somebody, anonymous source in Ukraine. Zelensky on TV says they're lying. We only got 75 billion. Yes, he took his billion out there, but he's Joe Biden, them, the big guy. Remember that 10%? Joe Biden, you got 10% of 100 and something billion? Ooh, Lord. The big guy. Why did Joe Biden give his whole family pardons? I told y'all, the Ukraine scandal. But because the Democrats lost. And remember this, Trump and the Republicans, they wanted to audit the Ukraine fund to see where everything went. The Democrats denied that. This was their piggy bank started up under Barack Obama. Obama hands not clean on this. $100 and something billion stolen from us. Never gave a shit about Ukraine winning no war. That's immoral. They wouldn't even give Ukraine a chance to win.
75 billion only went to Ukraine. $102 billion is missing. Guess what? When a Republican Senator, Rand Paul, tried to question and have an inspector general to audit the US aid to Ukraine, the Senate Democrats voted it down. How much did each of you swallow?
Come on. It makes sense. I remember Rand Paul. Rand Paul say, let's just audit the money. Let's not just send money. Let's make sure we can see where all the money is going to. As soon as the Democrats said, hell, we don't need that, you're finna steal. Why you don't want the American people to be able to make sure the money being properly spent? Because the money was never supposed to be properly spent. This was a slush fund, a big old piggy bank. This is why they want to drag the war out. They want to steal $1 trillion from us if they can keep this scam going. They just running out of bodies in Ukraine. Nobody wants to die anymore.
I don't want to use the word. How much did you swallow? And what about all the congressmen and women in the US Congress? Who got how much? And we know that in the past, the Biden family has benefited hugely from kickbacks in Ukraine.
That's why
including a board of directors payment for Hunter Biden for doing literally nothing in Burisma Energy. I mean, that's again another story in itself. So how much did the big guy get? How much did the big guy's family get?
Billions.
How much did the rest of the rank and file get? I mean, this is explosive, guys. I don't know. This is all taxpayer money. I mean, you can say, oh, well, you know, we just printed the money and gave it. You can bullshit. Somebody has to pay for it. My grandson will be paying for it, and he's mad. So what I'm trying to say is that this thing has gone on for way too long. And like everything else, this is also under the lens right now. And we are going to find some startling revelations. Let's go to the next slide, please. So who took the money? I didn't even mention the big 800-pound gorilla in the room. Is it the CIA? Is it the CIA that skimmed off the money? Because this is, again, something that has been laid at the doorstep of the Central Intelligence Agency. Take a look at some of the reference links that we have provided. You will see the story. Who is doing what? Who is saying that there is...
Obama is a child of the CIA. They created him. His grandfather worked for them. His mama worked for them. His stepfather, the Muslim general, worked for them. So, like I say, it started in 2014 under Barack Obama's leadership. The CIA was entrenched. Hell yeah, the CIA got a lot of that money.
A definite link with where the money went. I mean, you can make the argument that, look, the money given to Ukraine from the United States is not really money given to Ukraine. That money finds its way back into the military industrial complex where the arms and ammunition from the United States are bought by the money given by the United States to Ukraine and then deployed in the field, blah, 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 blah. I understand all that stuff. This is missing. The thing about money being used to buy equipment, arms and ammunition is that $75 billion, not the missing $102 billion. This is a $100 billion gaping hole. Where the heck did that money go? That's why I'm asking, WTF, where are the funds? Now, there is some corruption in Ukraine itself, which has been admitted. Ukraine said that there is some internal corruption, but that is peanuts, less than peanuts. The top military doctor stole over $1 million. You're talking $100 billion gaping hole. 1 million is nothing compared to that. And in 2023, the Senate Democrats blocked an amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act, NDAA, that would have established a lead inspector general for the Ukraine aid, denying past efforts to ensure oversight. As much as the Democrats are screaming that the Trump administration is acting really fast, so did the Democrats. These guys were just going at breakneck speed. We tried to compute how much money has been dispensed. That sum total of aid, of loans, and of guarantees from the United States to Ukraine, and we still don't have it. That's what Zelensky said. I don't know if you saw the video. There were English subtranslations or subtitles, and you could see that he said he is not even sure 177 is what he thinks it is. It could be higher than 200. I mean, the money press was working in overdrive, in a it's not a literal sense, in a metaphorical sense, because these days they don't print the money, it just gets transferred from X to Y. So what happened was Senator John Kennedy, there was Rand Paul who tried, and also Senator John Kennedy, he led the push for accountability, arguing that the taxpayers deserve transparency in how their money is spent. But the Democrats would have none of it. I mean, these guys have the cheek now to cry and say that, oh, you Republicans are acting too fast. Where the heck did this money go, guys? Tell us. This is the press release that John Kennedy came, and this was in 2023. I think it is, let me see if it is closely. It's July 26, 2023. So money has been flowing like water into Ukraine. And what do we have to show for it? Nothing. Ukraine is a deadlock. If nothing, Russia is winning it slowly but steadily. And what does the American taxpayer have to show for it? A lot of pain. About 5 million people are believed to have left Ukraine and settled in the adjoining countries. They'll have to be rehabilitated, assuming that there is a ceasefire in place. I don't know when that is going to happen. And the question now that is remaining is, where did that $100 billion go? Is it the CIA? Is it the generals or the big guy? By the way, I have been brought down to earth by some of the behaviors of the really decorated generals of the United States Army or armed forces, whether it is Navy or Air Force or whatever, because some of the corruption, some of the other scandals that have come out, even some of the most, thinking like, oh, this guy is next only to God. Even those people have been brought down to earth. When a certain general's autobiography was being written by a lady journalist, the guy had an affair with her. So this thing is up and down. If you are going to do these kinds of things, then who is guarding the secrets of the United States? If the generals are sleeping around, where is the security of the country headed? Or worse still, now, will Trump make sure that whoever is remaining in the rank and file of the United States Armed Forces, all of them, Army, Navy, Marines, as well as Air Force, are they clean? Or should we not also look at making sure that they are clean too? Otherwise, what's the point? You're cleaning house, you might as well clean house all the way. By the way, I'm going to give you an update on the USAID. 24 hours ago, we were the first ones out saying that USAID is under the scanner. They are thinking of closing it down. There are updates on that. I'm going to be sharing that with you. So join in at 6 a.m. IST tomorrow.
USAID, another scam that Trump put an end to today. I haven't even paid attention to a lot of it, but we're going to be looking at it together. So I'm seeing a lot of this, what was coming over my feeds while I was at work. But the USAID, where they use that money to bribe other countries, to overthrow other countries, to implement CIA coups in other countries. The CIA is pissed today at Trump. This is some crazy shit for Zelensky to be doing. Zelensky don't know. He done pissed the CIA off, but this is what happens. They can't never control them type of Frankensteins. But Trump definitely put a strangle on the U.S.'s money supply to be sending overseas to bribe anybody. That's over with.
Tomorrow morning for that. That's all I have on this one. If there are any questions, I'll be happy.
We're gonna be creating democracy overseas. That's what that's that bullshit. They lying and acting like they're helping other countries, but the whole time that money is used to bribe people. And I was really shocked when I seen Trump put it in. I'm like, whoa, boy. So that's one thing about government. You will never really know what the hell is going on, because I don't know who is in Trump ear. I know that Israel don't like that, because they need that money to be flowing to other countries so they can control other countries along with the U.S. Mexico caved today. Mexico is sending 10,000 troops to the border. That shocked me. Trump took the say he gonna take the tariffs off, but they're sending 10,000 troops to the border to stop fentanyl and drugs and shit. You know, a lot of shit still gonna come. But I know niggas should be pissed today because they love fentanyl and drug supply gonna get short, and the prices on all that nonsense, all that poison finna go sky high. Mark my word.
Over the years, covering it from Whitney Webb to Dan Cohen, all of the corruption, the money laundering, the regime change operations that USAID, Samantha Powell would show up in different countries. Welcome in. I'm Clayton Morris.
I'm Natalie Morris.
And we got a busy show for you on this Monday. Hope you guys had a great weekend. Tons of things happening right now. It's like a nonstop onslaught of news. Are we about to face a trade war at midnight tonight, of course? Tariff going in place at 12:01 Eastern time. Mexico already caved. They had a conversation. Trump did, of course, with Mexico. He's on the phone right now with Justin Trudeau in Canada. So
we don't know what will happen.
We don't know what's going to happen. We're going to watch it all, though.
That's right. We're also looking at the war in Ukraine because Donald Trump says now, hey, we want those rare earth minerals. They're ton gaslighting. Can Redacted just take a victory lap on this? Because we've been covering the Ukraine war for 2 years, saying that the United States' interest was in rare earth minerals that was held by Ukraine. So, yeah, that's no longer a conspiracy theory. We can take a point on the board for that one, put one up for Redacted.
They ain't getting shit out of Ukraine until they make a deal with Putin. You ain't going to be getting no rare earth minerals. Yeah. If the Nazis gone and they demilitarized, then Putin will let you dig around in that section of Ukraine that he don't give a damn about. But until then, you can't dig nothing up nowhere in Ukraine.
Hey, let's also do another victory lap because we're covering USAID here on the show, USAID, for years on this show, talking about their corruption. We've had a lot of great journalists over the years covering it, from Whitney Webb to Dan Cohen, all of the corruption, the money laundering, the regime change operations that USAID, Samantha Powell would show up in different countries. And you knew that a regime change was about to happen when she showed up.
Yeah.
Victoria Nuland fomenting a coup in Ukraine. So USAID closed today. The Trump administration with Elon Musk shutting down USAID. So we're going to look at all of that. And liberals are freaking out today, crying. They just held a press conference. They're crying about the closure of USAID, and I couldn't be more thrilled about it.
Oh, no. And like Elon Musk said, we put it in the wood chipper. If they're going to do the same thing with the National Endowment for Democracy, I am going to light a bonfire and get some hot dogs to roast, because this is something we want to see. We've seen so much government corruption funneled through the State Department, through these organizations, and we want no more of that. No more, we're saying.
No more of that. No more. So we're going to get to all of your news here in a second. But first, we want to tell you about our friends at Lear Capital, because, yes, you can invest in precious metals right now. Gold hitting an all-time high last week. Once again, silver prices surge right now because they just put a whole guide together on what Trump's
created a humongous crisis inside the United States. But Mexico gets something from it too. In fact, not reported in the president's tweet, but reported by the New York Post, is that the United States will work with Mexico to prevent trafficking of weapons into America's southern border. So the stopping of contraband will go both ways. Obviously, the Mexican people should feel a little bit safer, although everything in Mexico is run from the cartel, so we can't help Mexico to feel safe. But not only will drugs stop coming north of...
We just running this content, but I don't know. I haven't talked to no hood fellas yet. I don't know if they know the game finna get real fucked up. If I was them, I'd get out of any of that business and just do something else, because prices finna go sky high in all of the pharmaceuticals business. Oh, also arm yourself, because when this happens, the street's gonna get real dirty, because that dirty money stop. Bushwhackers come out. It's just the truth. You're hearing it here from Cuff Figure first. None of these people, they don't know that type of information. If the U.S. government and the 10,000 troops from Mexico finna go tighten up the border, now it's still stuff gonna flow through, but now those people with those smuggling routes can charge whatever they want for that shit, and it ain't even almost gonna be cheap. This finna be like when 9/11 happened. When 9/11 happened, the whole game changed. Even weed prices never came down. Anybody who was in the game like I was, you know that's a motherfucker fact. Remember this day, because this is like the 9/11 for the drug industry. It's going to change everything.
Of the border, but Our president is saying we will stop weapons and guns from going south. So this is what we call the art of the deal. As we speak, he's speaking to Justin Trudeau. Will we get a similar agreement out of that? We don't know. And we're still waiting to know whether or not China will respond as well.
Well, let's bring in E.J. Antoni. He's the research fellow at the Grover M. Herman Center for the Federal Budget and the Heritage Foundation. He's an economist, a well-known economist who's been diving deep into all of this. E.J., welcome to the show. Good to see you. This is a fluid situation, obviously, over the past few hours, this deal with Mexico. What's going to happen with, as Kevin O'Leary calls Trudeau, King Idiot, Trudeau up in Canada? What's going to happen there? And then we'll get to China. But just first, where do you think things sit right now with the United States and Canada on these tariffs?
I think we're in an absolutely phenomenal position, quite frankly. Trump at this point really holds all the cards, and I think he knows it too. And increasingly, people like Trudeau are beginning to realize that as well. Trade wars, much like all wars, are kind of a laboratory of sorts where we find out who is weak and who is strong. Now, what's happening right now in the initial shots of this war, I guess you could say, is that people are beginning to wake up that Trump is not kidding. He's not playing around. He is deadly serious about this. And so that's making people like Trudeau reevaluate their position personally and nationally as well. Again, as that increasingly happens, I think you're going to continue to see these nations bend the knee. We've seen that with Panama. My goodness, Marco Rubio goes down there and literally in a matter of hours, they're booting out the Chinese Communist Party. Mexico is already bending the knee as well. Again, I think it's only a matter of time before Canada follow suit. So the United States, I really want to emphasize, is in a tremendously strong negotiating position right now. In terms of what are we looking at for cost increases on consumers? Again, I don't think there's much cause for concern here. I think Americans have a tremendous amount of strength. And the reason for that is because we have a tremendous number of alternatives. We don't have to buy Canadian lumber. We don't have to buy Canadian energy. And were it not for all of the subsidies that these nations put in place to protect their own industries and the tariffs that they put in place to also protect their own industries, were it not for those things, then we wouldn't even be having this conversation to begin with. And so
Trump can bully Mexico, he can bully Canada. None of that shit is going to work with China. None of that is going to work with China. You can bully Mexico and Canada all day. They're puppets of the U.S. They don't want no real smoke. None of that is going to work with China, period.
Again, American consumers can do without these foreign imports pretty easily. And that's part of the reason why Trump, again, is holding all the cards here.
He's holding all the cards with China, with Mexico and Canada. Your ass can't do that with China, though. Well, sinking the U.S. economy. You can't do that to China, though. So Trump beating this shit good. Salute to the president. He got him a victory with Mexico and Canada. Now you're going up against the big dog, China.
Well, economists that I follow have said that the Walmart China Amazon effect has kept us from properly recovering from 2008 because it has artificially kept prices low. So would there be some kind of pain point where we actually have to adjust our consumer spending? It's not just my daughter can't spend on Temu or I can't buy dumb birthday tchotchke on Amazon through China. Is there more to it?
Oh, there's certainly a lot more going on here. And I think one of the things that a lot of those economists miss in those analyses is the fact that they don't pay attention to things like the currency manipulation that's going on in countries like China, where they are purposely devaluing the Chinese renminbi. We usually call it the Chinese yuan. They're purposely devaluing that.
This dude lying. When you're putting tariffs and sanctions, you're helping to sink their dollar, their currency, which actually strengthens them. So when you do what you're doing to China, you actually help China. And that's why I like the other guy, Ben Norton, his geopolitical program, when he be showing what Trump is wrong on this, and I take other advice from other people. This dude is just tricking Americans, into believing, well, trying to manipulate the currency. No, the Americans are actually, they're making mistakes that helps China. China don't mind you doing that to their currency, because it really strengthens their currency. Like Russia didn't mind you doing that, putting them sanctions on them. It actually strengthened them. Nobody cares but puppet nations. If you're a puppet nation and you still want to do all kind of business with the U.S., you have to crumble. But nobody cares about kissing the U.S. ass outside of these Western phonies.
Relative to the dollar in order to give essentially an artificial boost to their exporters. The other effect that has is the fact that people who are essentially accepting that Chinese currency here in the United States end up taking an absolute bath, because the longer they hold that currency before turning around and buying something back from China, the more value they lose as that currency depreciates. And so that's just one of the ways in which the trade that we have with China does not give America anywhere near the value that we oftentimes think it does. So when you look at factors like that currency manipulation, when you look at the subsidies that happen in Chinese industry, how the Chinese Communist Party has essentially created those subsidies through a complete vertical.
The Chinese Communist Party, this dude trying to promote propaganda, bro. We don't give a fuck what they is over there, bro. They're living good. And when you just play with TikTok, the whole fucking world seen that. You had to get the Americans away from China because they found out this Chinese Communist Party crap. Like them people over there living in poverty because they communists. That is a big lie. And Americans don't woke up. Even Republican Americans, they were like, what the fuck? Huh? They really own stuff over there? Yes, they really own stuff. They're shocked that we don't own shit and we pay so much for every goddamn thing. But we think we're living so great over here. That's another fucking finesse. You're being finessed so greatly over here.
Supply chain. And then also how China circumnavigates tariffs, and they essentially abuse agreements like the USMCA, the United States, Mexico, Canada Free Trade Agreement. What they essentially do is things like take goods from China that should be receiving a tariff, but first import them to Mexico or Canada, repackage them. Sometimes they do final assembly work, whatever the case may be. They are more or less abusing the rules in order to not only get rid of the tariffs, but also to get a more than usual favorable trade stance or a trade position for themselves. Again, they're using nations like Canada and like Mexico as a go-between, and they're abusing rules that were put in place for an entirely different purpose.
I want to put this up here on the screen here. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, EJ, but this is a map of the Canadian oil route here. And it's pretty fascinating because there's been so much talk about energy disruption in the United States. What would happen? Well, if you notice that on the right side of your screen is a thing called Energy East, which was a pipeline that was meant to deliver oil from the western part of Canada to the eastern part of Canada. That's been canceled. And the way that oil moves through Canada into the eastern part of that country is through the United States. It goes through the northern part of the United States, in addition to which refining oil has to happen in the United States because the refinery capacity isn't there in Canada. So there's been a lot of talk about energy in all of this. I mean, it seems to me that you're right. We seem to be holding the oil cards here as it relates to Canada. Am I wrong?
Oh, no, that's 100% right. We're also holding all the cards when it comes to natural gas as well. We forget that the Canadian oil industry really has never developed the way it has here in the United States. And so they may have a lot of the raw material, but they don't have, as you pointed out, the refining capacity. They don't have the infrastructure. They don't have a lot of the capabilities to bring product to market. And so would it hurt American refiners, for example, if we had tariffs put in place by Canada? Absolutely, it would, except it would have a pretty minimal impact on those refiners because the Canadian consumer is so incredibly dependent upon the product of American refiners and American refiners exclusively. I've seen, for example, I've heard some numbers thrown around for how high would oil have to go before it would be worth it for Canadian exporters to send that oil somewhere other than the United States to have it refined and brought back to Canada in the form of finished products like gasoline. And the cost would have to get somewhere north of $150 a barrel before it would even resemble profitability. And even at that point, you're just looking at essentially break-even costs. So it is just so much cheaper to send the oil here via pipeline on a relatively short distance than to ship it across, halfway across the world on a tanker and then back again. And so, once again, it's a good example of how our nation's economies are pretty tightly linked. But if you want to talk about who needs who more, if you want to talk about who would lose more in a trade war, the answer again is very clear that the deck is stacked in the favor of the United States. And we should point out that, much like in all wars, there are no winners in trade wars, right? Everyone loses, but not everyone loses to the same extent. And so if the United States and Canada really want to go toe to toe and get into not just a cold trade war, but a hot trade war, then absolutely Canada
want to be friends with Canada is in NATO. See, this is why nobody respect the U.S. no more, because they don't have allies. They have flunkies. And Trump is proving it. You're going to do what they say or else type. People are sick of that shit. They are bullying their NATO ally. Why would Russia and China ever agree to be anything other than adversaries with the U.S.? Because if you become so-called friend, that's their closest neighbor. In the Isle of black and brown people, they have white allies in Canada, and this is how they treat their allies. This is the face of America. And purely, see, sometimes it's not about race. It's about empire. Empire is not about race. That's serious business.
Is going to come out the biggest loser.
Now, something we've spoken out against on this show several times is what we call sanctions of mass destruction. When the Obama administration put sanctions on Syria and Iran, and young people, children they die because they can't get antibiotics. So there are innocent victims that have nothing to do with politics. Wow. Whereas President Trump's way to do business, his leverage is tariffs, not sanctions. Can you make, even though it's a complicated question, can you make that distinction? And is there something maybe that we're missing, that some innocent...
No, absolutely not. Same thing, different name, same effects, same chaos, same starving other people of that country. No, he ain't get Trump no pass. That's imperialistic. He needs to stop. He'll be a war criminal. Children die from this type of BS. Nope, absolutely not. We're not making no excuses for this. Nothing Trump do, like Redacted is trying to do.
People could be hurt by this in a way that we haven't thought about. Is there something there?
Well, again, trade wars, like any wars, are always going to have essentially, you're going to have collateral damage, right? You're going to have innocent people, as so far as any of us are innocent.
How disgusting was that? Collateral damage. Is this nigga talking about the babies and the elderly people who die? Collateral damage? Pff, man, this is a joke. Why they bring this? They lose credibility interviewing imperialist propagandists like this. The man just called innocent children and elderly people who die because they can't get the medicine from the tariffs and the sanctions collateral damage. Damn.
You're going to have innocent people be harmed. That's absolutely true. But it's just a question of what is the end goal here, right? Obviously our goal is not to harm any individual person, right? That's not what we're about. What we're about is getting a better deal for the American people. And what we're about is helping the American dairy farmer, the American factory worker, who right now is frankly getting hosed by Canadian tariffs, by Canadian non-tariff barriers, who, those things are essentially preventing our dairy farmers from selling more product in Canada. They're preventing the guy working on a factory line assembling cars. They're preventing his product from being sold in Canada. And if we want to talk about Mexico, my goodness, how many families need to lose loved ones to the fentanyl that Mexico is allowing to pour across their open border? And so, look, is there going to be some negative fallout from a potential trade war? Absolutely, of course there is. But what's the alternative? The alternative is to allow a much worse status quo to continue. Thomas Sowell, one of the greatest economists ever, has often said, life does not ask you what you want. Life presents you with options. And so we choose the best of the options that we have. And in this case, that's to go toe to toe with these nations. And if they want a trade war, so be it. We'll win in the end.
Bully these nations.
Right. Winning hearts with the Thomas Sowell quote. I got Natalie a Thomas Sowell poster for her office for Christmas.
And a sweatshirt.
And a sweatshirt.
I have the collection.
EJ, great to see you today. We really appreciate you. Obviously, this is a fluid situation. Mexico backing down on that on the tariffs there. We're watching what's happening with Trudeau in Canada, and we're going to see in this conversation what happens with China. Great to see you, EJ and Tony. Thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. All right, we've got a lot more news to get to here on your Monday. We're going to look at USAID. Peter Schweitzer is here, author of like 100 books, excellent books, by the way. Back in the day, I interviewed Peter on his book on the Clinton cash.
Accounting, financial management. Download this free report, The CFO's Guide to AI.
Which is hilarious to me when you think about President Donald Trump agreed to close the agency. And just this morning, you can see all of the kerfluffle outside there. I love they're saying USAID saves lives, which is hilarious to me when you think about the regime change operations around the world and how many people have died. How about the million?
Oh no, they're just deciding whose lives they carry.
How about the million Ukrainians who've died at their hands as a result of the regime change there? So yeah, these protests are additionally more than 600 employees reported being locked out of the agency's computer systems today. The doors basically shuttered. You can see Democrats holding a press conference there. They have a larger budget than the CIA. They're responsible for regime change operations around the world, like in Ukraine in 2014. They were given $5 billion of your tax dollars to carry out a coup in Ukraine, of course, led by Victoria Nuland. President Trump was on the tarmac and he said, USAID is run by lunatics.
USAID, or what's going on there?
Well, it's been run by a bunch of radical lunatics, and we're getting them out. USAID, run by radical lunatics, and we're getting them out, and then we'll make a decision.
So Jamie Raskin, among other Democrats, were there at this little protest today to basically call Donald Trump a dictator and how we have to save USAID. Watch.
Elon Musk, you didn't create USAID. The United States Congress did for the American people. And just like Elon Musk did not create USAID, he doesn't have the power to destroy it. And who's going to stop him? We are. We're going to stop him.
Never mind the fact that JFK signed an executive order creating USAID, so it wasn't Congress, but don't let facts get in the way. Here's Ilhan Omar, who also had something to say about the Trump dictatorship. Listen.
We are witnessing a constitutional crisis. We talked about Trump wanting to be a dictator on day one, and here we are. This is what the beginning of dictatorship looks like. When you gut the Constitution and you install yourself as the sole power, that is how dictators are made.
Wow, it's almost like they're probably making a lot of money from USAID, that they would get out in the cold weather and give a speech like that. They must be making some money. Let's ask Peter Schweitzer, president of the Governmental Accountability Institute, the author of like 100 books, excellent books, by the way. Here's one, Secret Empires. Here's another one, Extortion. Their extortion, how politicians extract your money, buy votes, line their own pockets. And Peter, I think I interviewed you a number of years ago when your book on Clinton cash came out. And it's unbelievable to see how the Clinton Foundation tied to USAID, all these Democrats out there in the cold complaining and crying about it. It all kind of comes together, doesn't it, Peter? Good to see you again.
Great to see you guys, too. Thanks for having me, Leland. No, you're right. I mean, the Clintons are an example of how the political class has enriched themselves through USAID, but they are hardly the only example. And that's the problem. It's really twofold. Number one, there are certainly things that USAID has done. You talked about Ukraine that are very troublesome. But it used to be that USAID was supposed to be an extension that protected American interests. Under Barack Obama, that changed. It then became the focus of advancing the so-called millennial goals that had been established. So it no longer became about projecting American power, American influence. It became about, affecting climate change and affecting migration. So it's totally went off of its original Cold War mission. The second problem is the one you alluded to specifically, which is a lot of the money does not go to help poor people overseas. It goes to consultancies and places like Arlington, Virginia, or Bethesda, Maryland, that are run by former politicians that rake in cash doing quote unquote consulting work on development in these countries. With the Clintons, it happened in Haiti. With the Bidens, certainly Burisma, that corrupt energy company that Hunter Biden was involved in, they were getting support from USAID. So this is an enrichment program, not for poor people in the developing world, but for the Beltway political class.
Now, most of this is run through the State Department in the same way they use the National Endowment for Democracy to decide. And the guise of it is that other countries are so backwards, they don't know how to be a democracy. They don't know how to be progressive when it comes to women's rights and gay rights. And they need us to go and teach them this, which is an incredibly ethnocentric and arrogant mission. So what do you think? I mean, and it's false also. It's a lie. So what do you think these people protesting are actually protesting for? Is it just they don't want Donald Trump to do anything that he wants to do? Or do they actually like the idea of being the boss of the world?
Yeah, it's a great question. Obviously, I can't look into their heads. I can speculate, but I would imagine some of the people there are probably true believers, right? They actually believe that U.S. taxpayer money should be given to them and given to their allies, because, of course, a lot of this money goes to non-governmental organizations upon which former USAID employees sit on the board or are actually collecting salaries. But some of them may be true believers in saying they're entitled to this and they know how to run the world. But I would argue that probably a lot of it has to do with this class of people that have set up consultancies, part of these public-private partnerships that exist to try to fix the world. And the sad fact is it has not worked. It will not work. Because of the problems in the developing world are oftentimes deep cultural problems related to corruption and other matters. And pumping a lot of government money into those environments is not going to improve the situation at all. So there's a lot of self-interest here. International banks, Wall Street, they love USAID-backed projects because they're guaranteed. They love USAID and other government-backed loans that happen in the developing world because it minimizes risk. And these are the people that are ultimately going to be hurt by ending USAID.
Oh, yeah. Also, it's gender ideology training in Peru. I mean, the list is endless for how much U.S. taxpayer dollars go to these ridiculous DEI programs around the world, and all of this. And someone in our chat room here just made the point. Dana says, it's not USAID. We need to remember that, because you're hearing that, of course, all over TV. It's USAID. It's not. They're not. I think that we shove that name in there and make it sound like it's friendly and sharing it. But talk about the CIA connections here, because Robert F. Kennedy kind of blew the lid on that, Peter, a few months ago on Tucker's show when he talked about USAID really being a front for the CIA, larger budget than the CIA, responsible for regime change operations like in Ukraine. How connected is the CIA here in USAID?
Yeah, well, the person in the chat room is quite right. It's not USAID. It's the U.S. Agency for International Development.
Right.
That is the official name, and it functions as supposedly developing in the developing world. And you're quite right that USAID is connected to the State Department. The State Department is kind of the preferred cover for CIA operatives operating overseas. They might be working in the embassy. They might not be in the embassy. They might be in an NGO, but USAID offers them the opportunity to carry out those policies, and it also gives them money, large sums of money. Back in the 1950s, before USAID, the CIA would have to take money out of its own coffers. It would have to get authorizations from the Intelligence Committee to spend $500 million somewhere. Now you can use aid dollars. So if you want to do something in, say, Botswana, you simply provide grants and support through NGOs to your preferred political candidate in that country. So that's how it works. So, eliminating it is, I think, a great solution. Greater transparency on our overall aid program overseas, I think, would be a great idea because there are others beyond USAID. And I think we need to have transparency, not only to know what ends that money is being given, but what the results are, because these programs are rife with corruption, and we don't find out about them because of their sort of secretive nature.
But something that the Trump administration has indicated is that some of the leftovers that does not poof into the ether will be absorbed into the State Department. And we've seen signaling from Marco Rubio saying, look, we're staying in our own backyard. We're not going to go abroad and tell people how to think and how to live and try and regime change.
Do you believe him? Do we believe him?
I'm not sure I believe that, but I'm shocked to hear it out of a government official. And so could that be true, that we now honor the idea of a multipolar world, whereas live and let live, respect your neighbors and how they want to run their own countries, sovereignty, that kind of thing? Or is there some kind of fear that this ethos would be absorbed by the State Department and we'll keep doing things like this?
Or that Marco Rubio is a neocon and then his true colors will show? Like, well,
you've just led the witness.
At the end of the day.
It's a good question. I mean, I don't know exactly what Marco Rubio is going to do. What I do know is this: the early signs from the Trump administration is that they're going to deal with the world in a very simple way. If you are our adversaries or our enemies, countries like Iran or China, you better be very afraid, because he's prepared to use military force if needed. That doesn't mean putting a bunch of boots on the ground, but using things like missile strikes. If you are Iran and you are going to damage the United States, we're going to come after you. But what he's also showing is he's going to deal with American allies or ostensible friends differently as well. I mean, for decades, we have dealt with countries like Mexico and Colombia and Paraguay and Uruguay, for example, by saying, hey, we'll give you aid dollars, we'll give you lots of money, and then try to help us out if you can. That has not worked out well. All you have to do is look at a country like Mexico, which is effectively run by the drug cartels, which is the gateway for fentanyl in the United States. The Mexican government's known this since the fentanyl crisis began over a decade ago, and they've done nothing. And what Trump is essentially saying to them is, we're not going to try to bribe you anymore. We're going to use a different stick, and we are basically going to say, you don't have access to our market without a big tariff unless you start doing the stuff that we're telling you to do. And the reason is, you should not take friends for granted. And countries like Mexico have taken the United States for granted. And Trump is going to change that, I think, by different.
The U.S. has been a friend to no motherfucking body. Mexico has been a flunky puppet state. And the U.S. industrial prison system has loved that poison coming across the border. The CIA has loved pumping weapons of war to the drug cartels. Who the fuck you think taught the cartels how to fly drone better than the U.S. military? These drones and stuff that they can use. Come on now, please. So they need to stop acting like the corruption. You got to stop the corruption in the U.S. for the rest of the world can stop being corrupt. We would have forced a lot of it on the rest of the world to do what the fuck we said. And it's our prison population is one of the reasons why big business love that border. They're going to be pissed too that Trump trying to stop a lot of them drugs from flowing over that border. So they'll get locked their ass up for something else.
Different tools. We're not going to throw money at you anymore. We are going to put tariffs on your goods and damn.
We're going to go after drunk drivers real tough now, man. Your ass drinking and all that, they got to get you. Somebody got to be in them prison.
Your economy if you don't cooperate. And I think that's a very good and healthy step in the right direction and away from the USAID model of effectively trying to bribe these people, and the bribery just doesn't work.
Yeah, I think we've had it with these NGOs. You're absolutely right. Peter Schweitzer has been our guest. I would encourage all of you, go wherever you buy books these days. He's got a fabulous library of fantastically written books. You can read Secret Empires, about the hidden corruption there. Extortion is Clinton cash. I mean, you want to read about the corruption in Washington, D.C., look no further than Peter Schweitzer. Peter, great to see you. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on.
My pleasure.
Well, we have more news to get to. We're going to talk about how NATO may be looking to overthrow Zelensky because all of a sudden they know he's corrupt. They've been busy not knowing that for a long time, but now they're all of a sudden willing to know it. That's interesting. We're also going to look at the bird flu and whether or not there is evidence of gain of function. Okay, whether or not, but we're going to look at that. Before we do that, though, and we're going to bring in guest Glenn Greenwald. We're really excited to talk to him.
I'm sure that sits well with Americans, right?
/redacted.
Well, are we on the verge of peace in Ukraine? Well, we'll get to that part of the story in a second. But overnight, we learned from Ukrainian dictator Zelensky that he doesn't know where most of the $200 billion in U.S. tax dollars went in his country. He said, you guys sent $200 billion. We keep hearing $200 billion, but all I got was $75 billion. That's all I got. I guess to build all of his houses and for his wife to travel to France. We don't know where that money went. I'm sure that sits well with Americans right now. And by the way, it's interesting that the media has been really kind of totally silent on that. They were telling us all how Ukraine would collapse unless we sent them all of this money. Where are all those Democratic members of Congress and members of the media telling us all of that?
What's our return on investment there?
So silent. All of it's so interesting. Let's bring in the host of one of the great shows on Rumble, System Update, one of the great journalists in the world. That is Glenn Greenwald. And great to see you again, Glenn. Welcome back to the show.
Great to be with you guys. Thank you so much. Thanks for the nice words.
Absolutely, Glenn. So, it seems almost as if the mainstream media were lying to us all this time about Ukraine, that they're suddenly coming around on this idea that, Ukraine looks like they're going to lose this war. There was never really a chance in all of it. But I want to play this little sort of montage real quick here, Glenn, because this was all of the mainstream media telling us Ukraine is absolutely going to win this war. Watch this.
The Russia-Ukraine war is entering a stalemate.
The war has reached a stalemate.
A deadly stalemate. In other words, neither side can win because it's a
stalemate. Those are the headlines tonight. But are they behind? Like yesterday's news, is the real truth the Ukrainians are winning?
We know that Ukraine will win.
Yeah,
Okay.
There's just a sample of that, Glenn. It seems like, were they lying to us?
Oh my God. Wait, you're saying the corporate media might have been lying about a war that the United States was involved in? I kind of can't believe that. I need a second to compose myself. If you go back to the 2022 and into 2023, pretty much 2 full years at least, it wasn't just that anyone who justified Putin's invasion of Ukraine was decreed to be a Kremlin propagandist. It was far, far, far broader than that. It was anybody who was saying that what was going to happen is, by all accounts, what everybody now acknowledges, even in Western European capitals, is in fact happening, which is that Ukraine is the most corrupt country, at least in Europe. There's going to be a huge disappearance of these billions of dollars sent there. Ukraine has absolutely no chance of winning the war just based on size alone. Russia can win a war of attrition. And that eventually what's going to happen is that Ukraine is going to have to cede a significant portion of its territory, either as a semi-autonomous buffer zone or to be annexed by Russia. And the only choice is not will Russia win. Russia will win. The choice is whether the United States and NATO is going to force Ukraine to endure a devastating war that destroys the entire country, that requires hundreds of billions of dollars to rebuild and wipes out an entire generation of men who did not want to fight in this war for the most part. They've been increasingly forced to the front line. And anyone who tried to raise any of that was not just in discourse, but by formal decree of the Ukrainian intelligence agencies, take it, believe me, I know I've been on several of those lists, decreed to be a pro-Russian propagandist. And as usual, unfortunately, it takes 3 to 4 years for us to now arrive at the point where Washington acknowledges that everything it said about this war proved to be untrue. It was a gigantic waste of life and money and destruction. BlackRock and all those other vultures are circling Kiev in order to profit off the rebuilding that the United States taxpayer will pay for. And so everything that was predicted in terms of worst case scenario has come true.
Well, yes, that was our experience too, because we were not experts on Ukraine. But you know what we did is we studied before we opened our mouths, and that turned out to be pretty good tactic.
We were Putin puppets.
Oh yeah, do you know the comic Boris and Natasha? That's what they called us.
Yeah, they call us Boris and Natasha.
Russian. Can you see because of the dark hair? Someone said that Clayton was married to Dmitry Peskov. That was put on his Wikipedia. I mean, we really were tortured as Russian propagandists, and now we can take a victory lap. Now, the Russian intelligence service is reporting that NATO may have a plan to oust Zelensky because they have been all of a sudden awakened to the fact that he has corruption inside of his government. When they've been so busy with blinders on, why?
Zelensky know where the money at. That's what's his insurance. That's why he just came out and said, hey, we didn't get a certain amount of money. He know who did get the money, and they better keep him alive or the files are going to be released on Dirty Joe, the big guy.
Do you think they are motivated to see what the rest of us could see in plain sight?
Well, if you go back to the summer of 2023, that was when we were promised that everything was going to be changed. There would change. There would be this great Ukrainian offensive that would push the Russians all the way back. All the same people who have been defending wars forever, Max Boot and David Petraeus and the Washington Post and Bill Kristol and the Kagan spawns assured us that this offensive was coming and this is going to be, and it completely failed. So by the fall of 2023, which is more than a year ago now, Ukrainian officials at the highest level who had been pretty, positive about the war were leaking that the only person left in Ukraine who believes that Ukraine can win is Zelensky. And he's kind of completely detached from reality in the way that leaders get when they cut off any democratic accountability. Of course, he proclaimed himself indefinite president, no more elections, no more any democratic accountability. And they were trying to cry for help that, look, if Zelensky is saying that we can win this war, nobody else in Kiev thinks this. And you started to see huge cracks in what had been a pretty unified Ukrainian government, which is what happens when a country is at war. It's totally normal and lasts for some time until they realize that nothing good is coming from it. And finally now, this is all sort of seeped out and spilled over. The Russians are advancing every day. The Ukrainian front line continues to crumble. There's massive dissent within the Ukrainian government. And I always thought there was a chance that, especially when Zelensky is forced to negotiate a peace deal, that this extreme nationalist, radical, right-wing Azov battalion and all of those people who we were told for a decade were dangerous and then told we weren't allowed to talk about once the war starts could be a threat to Zelensky, could oust him because they won't accept any kind of deal with Russia. And yet at the same time, Ukrainian survival depends on a deal, and their patrons in Washington and in Europe are now forcing it as well. And so I do think Zelensky is in an extremely precarious position.
Of course, after the 2014 and beyond, there was a genocide being carried out in what was formerly Eastern Ukraine, of course, and Donetsk and Donbass, and all of those ethnic Russians who were being slaughtered on a daily basis, pedal mines being launched into children's playgrounds where their limbs and hands were being blown off. So these people voted, and they voted to become part of the Russian Federation. Well, President Trump this morning in the White House just talked about the negotiation tool that seems like he might be using here, which is around rare earth minerals. I want to play this soundbite and get your thoughts on this, Glenn. Is this sort of a strategy move here that he could play against Putin? But here's what the president had to say. Listen.
We're telling Ukraine they have very valuable rare earth. We want what we put up to go in terms of a guarantee. We want a guarantee. We're handing them money hand over fist. We're giving them equipment. European is not keeping up with us. They should equalize. And look, we have an ocean in between. They don't. It's more important for them than it is for us. But they're way below us in terms of money. And they should be paying at least equal. They should really be paying much more than us. But let's say equal to us. And they're billions and billions of dollars below. So we're looking to do a deal with Ukraine where they're going to secure what we're giving them with their rare earth and other things.
So rare earth minerals. A lot of these rare earth minerals are under the ground in what is now the Russian Federation. So what's your sense of this sort of bargaining tactic here?
Well, I think there's been an assumption in the West, and probably it was true for the first year and a half, that Putin wanted a deal, he was ready for a deal, that the deal would be something like just Ukraine would never enter NATO, at least not for the next 30 years or 40 years or whatever, and that these eastern provinces that have a lot of people who identify as Russian, they're Russian-speaking, they're ethnic Russian, they've had their rights trampled over, as you said, they've been violently attacked, and the Russian government feels an obligation to protect them for obvious reasons, on top of obviously keeping Crimea, which is non-negotiable for the Russians. That was a deal that probably could have been had and could have been had pretty easily. In fact, they got pretty close to that deal early on when Boris Johnson and the Biden administration came in and Victoria Nuland said, this is not a deal that you can do. This is not a deal that you should accept. And so they didn't, because they had to listen to the people who fund them. The problem now that Trump has, who obviously wants to end this war, and he's talking about basically turning Ukraine into a vassal state, like give us all of your, crucial assets if you want us to continue to support you. So you're going to have the Russians occupying part of Ukraine, and then the rest of Ukraine is going to be a vassal state to the United States. Oh, we did such a good job for Ukraine and the Ukrainians with this war. But the problem is that Putin has spilled enormous amounts of blood, spent enormous amounts of money, does not trust any Western country, including the United States, even with Donald Trump, does not trust NATO at all. And who can blame him? And the bargain that he's now going to drive, if NATO wants a relief from this war without a humiliation, which is what Trump has to do, is not going to be an easy deal. It's going to be a very hard deal. That's what happens when you win a war. Is, you get the spoils, the victor goes to the spoils. And I think people in the West have not quite grappled with this yet. The idea that just because Trump goes in and threatens the Ukrainians doesn't mean the war ends. You have to deal with Putin as well. And that might be much harder because he's not dependent on the United States the way the Ukrainians are.
Glenn Greenwald, one of the greatest journalists in the world, host of System Update on Rumble, fellow Rumbler, free speech platform. Great to see you, Glenn. Love your analysis as always. Thank you so much for taking time out tonight to talk with us.
Great to see you guys. Love your show. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Glenn. Well, we got a lot more news to get to here on your Monday. Thanks so much, Glenn. Great to see that. And yeah, I'd love to get your thoughts on this in the chat room here. It's really fascinating to think about
what will become of Ukraine? Of them. Right. And over the weekend, I think many of you might have seen that there was a trending video between Piers Morgan and Tucker Carlson, where Tucker Carlson takes the piss out of Zelensky as a dictator, which I think is irrefutable. Yeah. If you make a checklist, dictator checklist, how to become one, Zelensky checks all boxes. So if in fact now the United States says we will work with Ukraine, but you need to hold elections, we need to work with your democratically elected leader, and then what? Who do Ukrainians support when they will have nothing left? They will lose the Donbass. They will never get Crimea back. And their resources will be funneled outside. So they will never be enriched by their own enriched land. How does this work for them? They were always going to lose.
Yeah.
I don't understand a peace to prosperity and sovereignty for Ukraine. And we could have had that and we refused.
Yeah, and it was always part of the plan all along, of course, was to drive Ukraine to the fight to the last Ukrainian. That was always the plan of people like Adam Schiff and others to use Ukraine. He told us, Adam Schiff told us, we fight it over there so we don't have to fight it here. And then Ukraine will fight to the last Ukrainian, as Lindsey Graham said. So this has been the plan all along. But you can see here, we have two converging messages. At the very least, Hillary Clinton told us that we think Ukraine will become some kind of extension of American business. Now Donald Trump is saying the exact same thing. He's just not saying it in a cagey way. We want to benefit from these, right? Well, BlackRock owns half the country, right? I mean, they went in and bought up all this land already. So this, I don't know, Trump's sort of saying this, but I mean, I think that ship has already sailed. Like a lot of this land has already been ceded in many ways to BlackRock and Vanguard. They've already gone in and bought up all of this land.
And we're not championing this by any stretch, because I would like to see Ukraine become a less corrupt place, which enriches its own people and has sovereignty and freedom of religion and speech. I don't see a path forward to this. We're not saying this is great. We're saying I told you so, because that feels good.
Has the CIA
after being called Boris and Natasha?
Has the CIA, the CIA, of course, created a coup that led to this current government there. That's what led to the separation.
Indubitably.
So, has the CIA ever, I think it's back to a question Philip asked a couple of months ago on the show, or a couple of weeks ago, has the CIA ever had a regime change operation in a country that's gone well for them, that has gone well for the United States? Because it doesn't seem like that. And now we have this giant mess on our hands inside of Ukraine.
Were they around for the Revolutionary War? Because I think that's the only regime change I can think of that the U.S. has been a part of that's worked out well.
Yeah, that's about it. And no, they weren't around then.
Okay, we have early reports now that Justin Trudeau is sending close to 10,000 personnel.
Ukraine could defeat Russia, said the new Secretary of State of the United States of America. Think of the magnitude of that statement. Think of the cost of that statement. Although I see Zelensky is claiming that he never actually got anything like the amount of money that the Biden administration actually sent him. 200 billions sent by Joe Biden to Ukraine, 77 billion received by President Zelensky, or at least that is what both of them are claiming. Whether the Americans never sent the money, whether the Ukrainians never received it, will be one of many of the gigantic skeleton hunts that will undoubtedly now begin in the post-mortem on the Joe Biden administration's relationship with Zelensky. I happen to think that both of these people might be telling the truth, that Joe Biden might think he sent 200 billions, and Zelensky might be telling the truth that he only received 77 billions. The question is, therefore, where did the rest of the money go? On that, we can agree with Zelensky, who's asking that very same question. If Donald Trump uses the nodal, he can destroy the Democratic Party over the subject of Ukraine. I've been saying that for 2 years now, and I wholeheartedly believe that the scandal that lies beneath the Ukraine war, the bio labs, the bio war weapons, the Hunter Biden connection, the big guy, and the sons and daughters, sometimes sons and daughters being the same person, of some of the biggest grandees in the Democratic Party. I'm telling you, if you go and search for the big beasts and what they were doing over this last decade in Ukraine, you will find the mother of all scandals. And I very much hope that the Russian authorities, who will pretty soon be in charge of much of Ukraine, will cooperate as wholeheartedly as possible with the incoming American administration's investigation. But think of the magnitude of Rubio's statement. We deceived people into believing that Ukraine could defeat Russia. Think what that means for the 1 million dead Ukrainians. Think what it means for the families of the 1 million dead Ukrainians who were deceived to their deaths, who were deceived to the widowhood of their wives left behind, who were deceived to the orphaning of their children. Think what that statement means to the tens of millions of Ukrainians now living anywhere in the world that they can other than Ukraine, and who will almost certainly never go back there. So if you and your country are now neighbors of substantial numbers of Ukrainian refugees fleeing the war, say hello to them, because they aren't going back anywhere. They are yours to keep. They are yours to live with as well and as happily as you can. And some of them are very fine people, but others are not. Others will be the transmission belt, just like the Kosovans before them, for a huge spike in drug trafficking, in pornography trafficking, in people trafficking, in weapons trafficking. What the Kosovo was to the Western countries earlier in this century, Ukraine is poised to be precisely that. We deceived people, said Marco Rubio. Think what that means in relation to your own European government. If the United States deceived you, your leaders were fools. If they were not fools, but decided to fool you, then they are knaves. Some countries, unfortunate ones like ours, our leaders are both fools and knaves at one and the same time. But that's not true everywhere. You get my point. When the Americans were deceiving people into believing that Ukraine could defeat Russia, their satrap governments in Western Europe decided that they too must deceive people on behalf of the Americans. And so they did. They deceived people into believing that they must shiver through 2, nearly 3 cold and sometimes hungry winters. They deceived people into believing that they must give away tens of billions, scores of billions of euros and pounds of their public money in order for Ukraine to defeat Russia. But they were deceiving you, as the American Secretary of State has now made plain. They deceived you into believing that you must turn your back, perchance forever, on cheap and reliable Russian gas in favor of expensive and entirely unreliable and environmentally far more damaging LNG from the United States. They deceived you into believing that that was necessary. They deceived you into believing that you had to spend more, much more, on weapons of war and preparedness for war, because they deceived you into believing that Russia was an aggressive and belligerent power whose leader woke up one day with a bad feeling towards his neighbor and, unprovoked, launched a massive invasion of that neighbor and might keep on going until he had overrun you. These were all deceptions. They deceived you into thinking that your sanctions on Russia were destroying the Russian economy, when in fact the Russian economy was doing very well, thank you very much. The economy that was being destroyed was yours. More fool you for being so deceived. After all, it was not for the want of trying. I told you until I was hoarse, here on this show and on many other platforms. I warned you they were lying, and now the United States government has admitted it. We deceived people, said the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. So if you've got a government of liars and deceivers, if your government works for the biggest liar and deceiver in Washington, Joseph Biden, then question is, what are you going to do about it? Well, the good news is the signs are that people are ready to wreak a terrible revenge on the centrist political class in Europe, and hopefully in turn elsewhere in the world, in places like Japan, in places like Australia, in places like Canada, about which more in a minute. But in Europe, there is definitely something afoot. As you know, I spent the last few days in Romania and then in Italy. And I can tell you that there are movements in both those countries that turn their back entirely on the pre-existing centrist political class and are looking for something new. What they find, what they choose, might very well not be to your liking or mine. What they choose, what they find, may very well offend your liberal social democratic sensibilities. But blame the centrists and the social democrats for that. For it is their bankruptcy, their willingness to be deceived, their willingness to deceive you and everybody else that has left the ruling elites bankrupt. Let's start with Romania. You know, it's always been true that democracy, human rights, the paraphernalia of the liberal and social democratic state was just lipstick on a pig. You've heard me say it 1,000 times before. They liked it. They thought it made them look good. They thought that it made them look good in relation to others who had no lipstick, but it was always just lipstick that would be wiped away whenever it was not necessary. It used to be the case that they could fool you, trick you into doing their bidding. But if it comes to pass that you will no longer be fooled, no longer be tricked into doing their bidding, they will play their last card, which is to do and be the very opposite of that which they always claimed to do and be. Romania is just the first, but certainly the biggest example. As you're about to hear from one of that country's top investigative journalists, because the wrong guy was poised to win a landslide election for president of Romania, they merely cancelled the election. They didn't even try very hard to fool you about the purpose. They claimed, a group of judges claimed, who it turns out are not even judges for the most part, a group of the political elite assembled under the title Constitutional Court, though it was not a court, decided that Georgescu, the front runner, the man who was ready by a landslide to be elected president of Romania, they simply called off the election. They said
that's a NATO country,
because it had been influenced by the Russians. Now, this guy Georgescu, I've never met him. I don't know anything about him beyond what you already know or can easily find out. I only know two things of real significance to me about him. First of all, he wanted to end the deception over Ukraine. He wanted to stop deceiving people over Ukraine. He doesn't want to be an enemy of Russia just across the Black Sea. He does not want World War III, thinks we should stop going farther and farther down the road towards World War III. Well, I don't care if you call him right, far right, or whether you call him Jumping Jack Flash. I don't care what you call him. If he wants to stop World War III, I hope he wins the presidency of Romania. Whether you like his views on the pre-war history of Romania, whether you agree with him that all this wokery and quackery and greenery has all gone far enough, whether you agree with that or not, is of no moment by comparison with his unwillingness to allow Romania to be turned into a NATO base camp for never-ending, further, and potentially catastrophic confrontation with Russia. So he's all right, so far as I'm concerned. And guess what? The same is true in Germany. You can call this AfD anything that you like. I actually don't care what you call them, and they don't care what I call them. The only thing that is significant in the German election are the parties of the left and right, Sarah Wagenknecht and the AfD, both of whom say enough of this war with Russia. Bring it to an end right now. End the sanctions which are destroying the German economy. So, all these other matters, I shouldn't need to labor this point, will be moot if the world goes up in nuclear smoke. It won't matter what your personal pronouns are or your position on Palestine is. It won't matter a damn, because there will be no world and no humanity to live upon it. Which brings me to the last issue that I have time to address. Netanyahu is nothing if not frank. Before boarding the aircraft that has flown him to Washington, flying over jurisdictions, by the way, that are legally obliged to have brought his plane down and arrested him. But that didn't happen. He said, President Trump and I are going to reorder the Middle East in a way that will benefit everybody. Big ambition. He intends to persuade Trump of the wisdom of doing his bidding. And so far, so good. Trump isn't really America first, you know. He's Israel first, you know. And whatever it is that Netanyahu has fiendishly devised for these talks over the next couple of days, be sure that they're not going to benefit everybody. They're not going to benefit the 350 million souls from the Atlantic to the Gulf who live in the Arab world. They're definitely not going to benefit the millions of Palestinians ablaze this evening in the occupied West Bank of the River Jordan. The massacres and mass mutilation going on in the West Bank right now has one purpose only. Its purpose is to try to put the skids under the Palestinian refugees living there in illegally occupied territory and cascade them towards Jordan. Just as the genocide in Gaza had no other purpose than to ethnically extirpate from the land the millions of Palestinians living there. Trump has been blunt. Egypt will have to take them. Jordan will have to take them. And when both said no, he was even more blunt. They will. They will, he said. We do a lot for them. They'll do it for us. The answer to that question will determine whether the entire Middle East will go up in flames. Because any attempt to drive the millions of Palestinians in the West Bank into Jordan will not just require a pogrom of unimaginable scale in the West Bank, it will bring crashing down the puny and diminutive pygmy Hashemite dynasty in Jordan. And it will set the East Bank of the River Jordan even more ablaze than the West Bank. And ditto, any attempt to force the popinjay, puppet president of Egypt will not just collapse al-Sisi's regime, it will create a revolutionary situation in Egypt that will set the world ablaze. So be careful what you wish for, Mr. President. I know that you know that Netanyahu does not have your best interests at heart. Netanyahu has greater Israel's interests at heart, and those interests are not the same as yours, let alone the same as the rest of ours. Well, coming up,
In the daylight, a drone filmed views of Bristol Hotel in Odessa region, revealing the extent of its damage caused by the Russian Armed Forces precision missile strike, Iskander-M, on the night of January 31, 2025. According to available data, Bristol Hotel is an elite hotel in the center of Odessa city, where it was previously reported that foreign mercenaries were staying there. However, it has now become clear that the building also housed representatives of NATO countries, including military specialists from Britain and France, who arrived in Ukraine. Sources indicate that Ukrainian intelligence officers and employees of SBU and GER, who are responsible for planning special sabotage operations against Russian strategic targets, were there at the time of the attack. As a result of the strikes, 3 powerful explosions and subsequent fires were recorded in the affected area.
NATO died this night.
According to Mayor Hennady Truhanov, the full extent of the damage is still being assessed. Ukrainian media also published views of a large crater by Iskander-M on the roof of the hotel. The ceiling collapsed, windows were broken, and debris was scattered on the floor inside. According to unofficial data, a number of NATO military instructors were destroyed. Among those who were at the epicenter of the attack were Norwegian diplomatic representatives, according to a status published on social media by Zelensky. He said with relief that there were no casualties. 3 wounded people, 2 women and 1 young man, were provided with assistance. Moscow has repeatedly stressed that Ukraine is not a NATO member, so there is no legitimate purpose for NATO representatives to be there, coordinating operations and sabotage, including preparing attacks on targets in Crimea and organizing provocations in the southern direction.
A few hours ago, war correspondents declared that Russian troops had completely broken through the Ukrainian army's defenses in Chasiv Yar. According to them, the Russian army has completely taken over the northern part of the city. This means that Russian troops have managed to take control of micro-districts such as Severny, Novoseverny, and Desiatoy. The chief of the operational staff of the intelligence center under the designation Melody, a major of the Russian army with the call sign Shuksha, also confirmed this information. According to him, Russian soldiers, with the support of sniper groups, have already begun to clean up the liberated territories. This Russian officer also added that the current fighting in Chasiv Yar shows the Ukrainian army's defense in this city has completely collapsed. Well-known military journalist Yuri Podolyaka also commented on the successes of the Russian troops in Chasiv Yar. In particular, he stated that Russian troops are advancing in Chasiv Yar every day. This became possible after the Russian High Military Command transferred a battle-hardened volunteer brigade under the designation Hispaniola to Chasiv Yar. In general, Russian and even Ukrainian war correspondents admit that the Ukrainian grouping in Chasiv Yar has completely lost control over the northern and central parts of the city. Some pockets of Ukrainian resistance are still observed in the southern part of Chasiv Yar. However, they are gradually being suppressed by the advancing Russian troops. Against this backdrop, the chief of the operational staff of the Intelligence Center admitted that the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation may announce the liberation of Chasiv Yar in the coming days. The Russian army is also continuing its rapid offensive in the Pokrovsk direction of the front. So, a few minutes ago, the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation officially confirmed the liberation of the settlement of Novoyelazavetovka. South of this settlement, Ukrainian army units were also forced to flee from Novoandriivka. Simultaneously with this, the Russian army continues to approach the city of Pokrovsk from 3 directions at once, from the south, southwest, and southeast. According to war correspondents, Russia has significantly increased the use of combat aviation in this direction of the front. And this became one of the decisive factors in the Russian army's advance in Pokrovsk direction of the front. In many ways, this became possible after the latest Russian 5th-generation Su-57M fighter jets completely neutralized enemy air defense systems in this direction of the front. This fact allowed Russian combat aviation to strike at enemy positions even in the depths of the Ukrainian defense. It seems that the Ukrainian High Military Command began to get nervous. To somehow stop the advancing Russian troops in Pokrovsk direction, the Ukrainian command began to use even the untouchable reserve of fighter jets. As it turned out, on February 1st, 7 Ukrainian Air Force fighter jets took to the sky simultaneously. They were mostly MiG-29s, Su-27s, and even 2 American F-16 fighter jets. All of them were armed with American JDAM guided aerial bombs and AIM-120 air-to-air cruise missiles. Immediately after that, all Russian air defense systems on the Crimean Peninsula and near the Kerch Bridge were put on full alert. However, the Ukrainian MiG-29, Su-27, and F-16 did not fire a single missile towards Crimea and the Kerch Bridge. As it turned out, these warplanes headed towards Pokrovsk, through the Dnipropetrovsk region. The main targets of these fighter jets were Russian positions south and southwest of Pokrovsk. It is noteworthy that as soon as these warplanes began dropping guided aerial bombs on Russian positions, while in the airspace of the Dnipropetrovsk region, 3 fighter jets, MiG-29, Su-27, and F-16, disappeared from the radar simultaneously. At the same time, the other 4 fighter jets hurriedly left the area. Later, Russian sources, as well as a number of officers from the Russian military department, stated that these enemy fighter jets were attacked by a 5th-generation Su-57M fighter, with the help of the latest ultra-long-range Ur-37M missile, capable of hitting targets at a speed of 7,000 km per hour, and a distance of more than 300 kilometers. It is worth noting that the Ukrainian Telegram channels also confirmed the loss of 3 Ukrainian Air Force fighter jets. According to them, only 4 fighters returned to the airbase that day, while the other 3 disappeared from radar in the airspace of the Dnipropetrovsk region. Moreover, a number of reputable Russian military experts, citing their own sources in the Russian military department, also stated that on February 1st, U.S. Air Force officers were at the helm of the F-16 fighter jets. Thus, it can be stated that during the attack on the Russian positions in Pokrovsk direction of the front, the Ukrainian army and NATO forces lost not only a MiG-29, Su-27, and F-16, but also an experienced U.S. Air Force officer. Most likely, shortly, in order to conceal the presence of American pilots in Ukraine, the Western media will again report on some kind of car accident, a plane or helicopter crash, in which
They already did that. They told us that 3 U.S. Army officers died in a helicopter crash that crashed into a plane in Washington, D.C.
U.S. Army soldiers.
People were already saying they thought that goddamn helicopter was remotely piloted anyway. But you would say, if it was remotely piloted, where are the dead pilots at in Ukraine?
And officers allegedly died. By the way, insiders in Kyiv said that the head of the Kyiv regime, Volodymyr Zelensky, took the loss of another F-16 fighter jet and the gradual retreat of the Ukrainian army in Chasiv Yar and Pokrovsk directions of the front very painfully. According to them, this illegitimate president of Ukraine locked himself in his office and ordered his entourage not to inform him about the bad news from Donbass. Insiders in Kyiv claim that Volodymyr Zelensky became depressed again and started taking forbidden medical preparations to calm himself. Well, my dear truth seekers, the fact is that this dead man walking understands perfectly well that the days of Pokrovsk and Chasiv Yar are numbered. Volodymyr Zelensky understands perfectly well that after the liberation of these cities by the Russian troops, a domino effect will start, which will lead to the flight of the Ukrainian army not only from the Donetsk People's Republic, but also from the Kharkiv region.
Russian Fab smart bombs continue to fly and fall on Ukrainian military positions, one of which is Ukrainian UAV control command post in the settlement of Myropilya, in Sumy region near border of Kursk region. On January 31, 2025, the Russian Defense Ministry released combat footage. A pair of Su-35 and Su-34 fighter jets are actively working in Kursk border area, where recently the order was given to Kiev's troops to deliberately commit atrocities against civilians in the region. Su-35 aircraft escorted Su-34 fighter bombers, which were carrying high-explosive Fab aerial bombs, and then threw the FABs like candy, flying right into one of UAV control command posts of Zelensky's troops. Ukrainian sources continue to report that Russia is running out of aerial bombs, missiles and another ammunition, and its victories in Kursk region. The fact that Ukraine continues to suffer losses every day. Russian Su-35 and Su-34 fighter bombers significantly outperform in maneuverability, which is important for close air combat at a distance of 30 to 50 kilometers. The crews of Su-35 fighters not only carried out strike missions, but also provided air cover for Su-34 bomber, ground attack aircraft and military aircraft during the attack on an important command post in Myropilya, after objective control was carried out by a detachment of UAV from the Donbass Wild Division. Thus, Fab accurately hit its target and leveled it to the ground, as shown in the footage released by Russian channels on February 2 during combat work on January 31. Preliminary estimates indicate that Ukrainian army lost up to dozens of military personnel at UAV control center, who were most likely flying drones towards Kursk. Kiev's invasion on Kursk is the most failed mission in history, according to experts. Since the start of the invasion, Ukrainian losses have increased to more than 56,980 soldiers, 329 tanks, 243 infantry fighting vehicles, 191 armored personnel carriers, 1,681 armored combat vehicles, 1,774 motor vehicles, 402 artillery pieces, 45 MLRS launchers including 13 HIMARS and 6 US-made MLRS, 16 anti-aircraft missile launchers, 8 transport loading vehicles, 106 EW stations, 15 anti-battery warfare radars, 5 air defense radars, 33 engineering and other material units including 14 anti-obstacle vehicles, 1 UR-77 mine-clearing vehicle, 9 armored recovery vehicles, and 1 command post vehicle. The operation to neutralize Ukrainian units is ongoing, the Russian Defense Ministry reported on February 3rd.
Now, Iran has unveiled its third missile city, sending chilling warning to U.S. and Israel. Is Iran's empire growing? And what impact would that have on the region? Here's a report that gives you more.
Iran's missile empire is growing. Tehran reveals its new missile base.
How could this be when Israel just said that they severely damaged Iran's capabilities to strike back? How could this be? And senators in the U.S. have repeated that on record in the halls of Congress, saying that Iran's missile defense were severely destroyed after Israel and the U.S. stood. Oh, what a joke. So now Iran is humiliating these people. And they're not covering this on U.S. media neither because they don't like y'all to know.
The third underground missile base to be unveiled in a month. The new underground base in southern Iran houses dozens of missile launchers mounted on mobile trucks for rapid deployment. These include cruise missiles with ranges from 100 kilometers to 1,000 kilometers.
Ghada 380 cruise missile has a range of more than 1,000 kilometers and has anti-jamming capabilities.
The missile city features anti-jamming systems to counter electronic warfare from hostile forces. The facility is reportedly designed to target destroyers in strategic southern waters. In a rare visit, IRGC Chief Major General Hossein Salami took stock of the missile city on Iran's southern shores. He inspected the combat readiness of the IRGC Navy's missile units. On the 18th of January, the IRGC Navy unveiled an underground naval missile base in the Persian Gulf. IRGC's Aerospace Force made a separate underground missile city public on the 10th of January. Iran insists its ballistic missiles serve as a crucial deterrent against the US and Israel. This comes even as Iran's nuclear ambitions are under scrutiny. Reports suggest Iran is allegedly hiding nuclear missile development under its space program. Tehran has tested the GOEM-100 rocket 3 times, which can carry nuclear warhead. Iran is planning to develop a more advanced GOEM-105 missile in the coming months. And reports indicate the advanced GOEM-105 to be based on designs handed over by North Korea. Concerns about Iran's military advancements continue to grow amid rising tensions in the region. Iran is boosting its arsenal as the threat to its nuclear sites looms large. Iran is flexing its military muscle even as it shows willingness to reach an agreement over its nuclear program with the West. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
And to discuss more on the story, we were earlier spoke
2025. Pepe Escobar joins us from Moscow, where it is midnight local time. Pepe, thank you very much, my dear friend.
My pleasure.
You have a terrific piece out this morning on what is Sultan Erdogan up to, and I want to explore it with you. But first, one or two questions about Israel and one or two questions about Ukraine. Is Trump going to get General al-Sisi and King Abdullah to each take 250,000 Palestinians, as he indicated he would attempt to do the other day? And would the Palestinians, 1.5 million of them, voluntarily leave after what they've just been through?
Well, assuming Sisi and the little king would accept, they would have 2 civil wars at their doorstep. They already said no, directly and indirectly. But there's not much of a margin of maneuver in both cases, right? These are vassals. These are ultra vassals. Trump can force them to accept it and, damn the domestic consequences. But the most extraordinary fact in all that is that Trump is trying to repackage a genocide as an extermination and an expulsion operation, as ethnic cleansing. This is extremely serious in itself. And this is how it's seen by the Arab street. If you go to a souk in Cairo, if you go to the souk of Aleppo, for that matter, and you ask people, everybody's going to say this is beyond inadmissible.
Do you think that both General al-Sisi's government in Egypt and King Abdullah in Jordan would be overthrown by a massive movement if this Trump idea were to come to pass, no matter how he sweetened it with cash?
Absolutely. $10 billion, 15, 20, which in terms of the US is peanuts, but it's enormous amount in both Egypt and Jordan. Artificial government, especially Jordan, is a completely artificial setup. And the king is viewed by most of the population, which, by the way, is Palestinian in Jordan, as a traitor of the Arab cause and a traitor of Palestine.
Do you think that Donald Trump has the same contempt for the personal freedom of the Palestinians as Joe Biden?
That's a very complicated question, Judge. We don't know what Trump really thinks about the Palestinians. First of all, because he rarely speaks about the Palestinians, and he never mentioned the word genocide. It's not a word, it's a fact, in fact. So we really don't know. He only sees, apparently, if we take at face value what he said so far, he only sees Gaza as a tremendous real estate opportunity by the sea in his own words, phenomenal location. Well, I think that spells it out, doesn't it?
Wow. Are we in danger of his having a nickname similar to Biden? Genocide Donald, made in America?
If he proceeds like these first 10, 12 days, unfortunately, yes.
What do you think Prime Minister Netanyahu will ask of him when he visits the White House next week?
A green card to proceed with the second stage, his and Netanyahu's own way, which means he will continue to do what he was doing before the first ceasefire. And in fact, nothing changed in terms of expelling the Palestinians from Gaza, from Netanyahu and from his cabinet. Nothing has changed. This is a pause. They are regrouping, rearming, and they'll continue to do what they were doing.
I want to play for you a clip from Daniel Levy, the British-born and educated. You may know him, former Israeli negotiator. This is dynamite, what he said. Sonia, cut number 1.
One cannot underestimate the impact on the Israeli public psyche of the release, the initial 3 who were released. And of course, everyone therefore saw those images. They've been told Al-Qassam defeated. They've been told the public has turned against them. They've been told so many things. And then they saw those images. An occupying army, armed and aided by the most powerful military in the world, the US, a nuclear armed state, Israel, in a struggle between that and a resistance movement, we saw a very powerful display, and Israelis saw that. We're being told by Israeli analysts, talking heads, political leaders, and their backers in the West that the next phase has to be to move forward. We have to have the demilitarization of the reality is the most significant force in Gaza by a long stretch is Hamas. Al-Qassam emerges from this with a very strong narrative. Israel's narrative doesn't look so good at all.
As Netanyahu failed, is Daniel Levy essentially correct?
Daniel is essentially correct, even if he doesn't mention genocide. He was very diplomatic trying to cover it, right? But his argument is absolutely correct. And Al-Qassam is much more powerful now than they were 15, 16 months ago.
What is Al-Qassam?
Brigades, the brigades that we see exactly in this video. And this proves that what Yahya Sinwar was correct from the beginning, what he was doing. Correct in terms of building a resistance fighting force capable of withstanding absolutely everything that Israel threw at them. And that was massive, as we all know.
Okay. To Russia, does the Kremlin believe that the war is effectively over?
Not over. Very important context. I arrived here 4 days ago, Judge, so I haven't had time yet to have in-depth conversations and to have answers to. I have a list of questions like gigantic. Tomorrow night, it's the first big night. I have a dinner with a very good source. He'll answer probably 80% of my questions, including your question. Not that it's over, but it's proceeding the way they want it. And it's fascinating to see on the American side, this, I called it the disco inferno, this enormous bombast by Trump, 24/7, cameras clicking, breathless headlines, you name it. And the Russians are like Taoist monks observing all that without barely a smirk. And Peskov, Putin's press officer, he said this week, look, we still haven't got even a phone call to set up the famous Trump-Putin phone call. For the moment, it's only bombasts. There's nothing substantial.
Do you think that Trump and Putin will have, perhaps with President Xi and maybe with the Prime Minister of India, a Yalta-like meeting resolving the huge long-term problems of the security of America, of Europe, of Russia, of China, and who has hegemony over what? Well, that's too optimistic to hope for.
Realistically, if this was a reality and not an environment set up by fantasy overlapping over fantasy, we are living in a completely artificial, and the world of those postmodern theoreticians of the 80s called simulacra. Yes, it's a perpetual simulation. If we had a new Yalta, you have to be Putin, Trump, Xi, perhaps Modi, and perhaps a fifth component, certainly not from Europe, because Europe is absolutely irrelevant. It would be certainly from somewhere around Eurasia. And considering Trump will be on the table, he will probably call Saudi Arabia, for instance. If we have these 5 players deciding, especially in terms of West Asia and parts of Eurasia, and the relation between the Atlanticist sphere and Eurasia, the post-Soviet space, etc., this will be a realistic new Yalta. We know it's not going to happen, realistically.
Let me ask you some questions about Turkey. Can
Yes.
Turkey be a member of BRICS and NATO simultaneously?
That's a killer question, Judge.
You actually asked the question. I'm mouthing your own question because it's so
Exactly. This is what I ask my fabulous interlocutors, academics, scholars, very well-connected people. We usually have one of these like once a year when I go to Istanbul. We get together and at the end of the dinner, I launch my questions and they go on. It's really fascinating. And the great thing is that they are not Islamists. They are not affiliated to the AKP party. They are not pro-Erdogan. They are secular. Very, very important. They are, let's say, different brands of Kemalism. They are pro-Turkish Republic, nationalist Turks, of course, but not out of control. And one of the first things that they actually answered said, no, it's impossible because Erdogan, once again, he's always hedging his bets. This is something that I learned 3 years ago when I spent the first part of the year, 2022, including the start of the special military operation. I was living in Istanbul. And this is something that I didn't know and I learned over there, that 90% or even more of the Turkish elites are in fact totally Atlanticists. They are pro-US, pro-Europe, and pro-NATO. I didn't know that. I thought it was like 50-50. No way. It's the absolute majority of the ruling elites and the ruling classes. So they look at Eurasia, they look at Russia, China. They don't really understand Russia and China, especially. India, on a more folklore vein, all right? But they still don't understand. They think that their destiny will be linked to the West. It's not going to happen because we all know that the EU de facto vetoed Turkey applying for membership to the European Union. But that's the mindset of the people around Erdogan and behind Erdogan and the people who control follow the money crowd in Istanbul and Ankara especially.
You refer to Erdogan as the Sultan, and that, of course,
this, of course, a little bit of sense of humor.
Well, of course. I mean, you have the best sense of humor, Pepe. But who and what are the neo-Ottomans? And is Erdogan one of them? In other words, do these people want an empire of Turkey?
Or reconstituting parts of the Ottoman Empire. That's why we call them neo-Ottomans. The number one neo-Ottoman, in fact, the guy who conceptualized this in a few books was the former foreign minister Davutoglu, which now he is in a very small political party. He's practically a sideline from politics. And he influenced Erdogan a lot. Another thing that I learned in Istanbul, Erdogan doesn't read. Erdogan doesn't know in detail strategizing.
He has that in common with the current president of the United States.
Well, on a different level,
I'm sorry to interrupt you. How does he gather information and who influences Erdogan?
The people who have his ears. And at the moment, there are two. His chief of intel, Kalin, and his former chief of intel, MIT, which is the current foreign minister, Hakan Fidan. Fidan is a very, very smart character. He has presidential ambitions or prime ministerial ambitions or whatever. He wants to be on top later on. And so Erdogan listens to these two, especially. And they are neo-Ottomans, no question.
What does Erdogan want?
Exactly. And this is something, part of their answer my question. He wanted Aleppo, Judge. He was not expecting the thing going all the way to Damascus. And that's why one of my interlocutors said, now, Turkey was waiting, but in the end, they got something that they didn't want. They don't have the resources, financial resources, or the military resources to take over Syria and to manage
the western part of Syria, the Syria that really works, right? That corridor from Aleppo in the north to Damascus in the south. They can't. At best, they could try to have a proxy government in Aleppo. That's it. But now they have practically the whole thing. The whole
Will Erdogan allow the Israelis to conquer Aleppo and Damascus?
Never. No, never. From a Turkish and MIT point of view, Israel stops far away from the southern suburbs of Damascus. That's it. That's where they are at the moment. We don't know if they're going to proceed. We don't know if they're going to the left or the right, but not to the north. So the problem is how Turkey is going to manage the new president of Syria.
Right. The new president of Syria, literally the world's great terrorists.
He proclaimed himself president on Wednesday. This is completely nuts, and not a word from the NATO stand space. You have a former head chopper, a former Al-Qaeda in Syria, who's now running the government.
Did the United States, against which he fought in Iraq and Afghanistan, utter a peep over this?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. It reminds me, I'm sure our audience remembers when WikiLeaks exposed those emails to Hillary saying that Al-Qaeda in Syria is on our side.
Yes. You may have quoted it, or it may have been Aaron Mate. There's a very famous email from Jake Sullivan.
From Jake Sullivan to Hillary. You're right.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. Saying they're on our side. They tried to hide that email, and of course, she was humiliated when WikiLeaks exposed it, and she couldn't justify it.
And this was the conflict. Okay, we all of us who were following the war, even from the outside or from around, from Lebanon or from Iraq, we knew that, but we didn't have an official confirmation by an American official. There you go. So nothing changed, in fact. So the Americans got what they wanted, which is what they wanted for 13 years at least. The Turks didn't get what they wanted. And now
what did the Americans want besides Assad gone?
A totally destabilized Syria, because that profits Israel.
Wow.
That's the short answer.
Supposedly, Donald Trump has ordered American troops out of Syria. I don't know if that's true. If it is, it'll be the second time he did so. First time it didn't happen. Will it happen this time? And if so, what will be the consequences?
We don't know if it's going to happen, Judge, because the deep state doesn't want it to happen.
Right.
And on top of it, there's a very profitable operation going on with the oil in the Northeast, where the Americans are protecting the Kurds who are stealing Syrian oil, crossing the border to northern Iraq. And this oil stolen is sold to Israel at a discount. Why? Because it's stolen. For them, it's free. So they can charge anything to Israel. It's already a profit. So, so this oil red line, let's put it this way, to quote our friend Cy Hirsch, it will continue. It profits the Kurds, it profits the Americans, and it profits Israel.
If the Turks had not sold oil to Israel, would it have been able to commit genocide in Gaza?
That's a really good one. It will have been much more difficult, but we have to look at the sources of oil. And the main source, if I'm not mistaken, 40% of Israel's oil comes from Turkey. The BTC pipeline, Baku, Tbilisi, Ceyhan. So the oil is Azeri, comes from Baku. Then it travels through the pipeline, which was set up by our good old friend, Grand Chessboard, Zbig Brzezinski. Arrives in Ceyhan in Turkey. And from Ceyhan is transported to Israel. 40% of Israel's oil.
Wow.
And I asked my friends why he didn't just, turn off the spigot. But no, he can't. He can't. It's too much money. And Turkey, On
So
top of
while
it,
he's calling Netanyahu a killer, and while he's articulating the word genocide, he's funding it and
He's
making
funding
money
it.
off it.
Absolutely, absolutely. But this is taboo in Turkey, Judge. You no, forget about seeing this on Turkish media. Out of the question. This is discussed among independents, of course, and let's say even in the bazaar. It's fascinating to compare all that to the. I always go to the bazaar. I have very good friends in the bazaar, and we were joking that we should bring Donald Trump here. So the real art of the deal is to strike a deal with a carpet seller in the bazaar.
Right.
Then this is the real shit.
I would love to see Trump negotiating for a carpet at a bazaar. That'd be worth the price of admission alone. I'll let you go, but what do you do now? What is Moscow like at 12:30 in the morning on a Friday morning? Lively or quiet?
Everybody's asleep except this little studio.
All right. God love you. Thank you for staying up. We much appreciate your analysis.
My
It's
pleasure,
brilliant
Judge.
and gifted as always. I hope we can see you again next week. Have a nice
Definitely from Moscow. You too,
Thank you.
Judge. Thank you so much. Thank you.
God bless you. What a wonderful, wonderful human being. Tomorrow, Friday, at the end of the day, for the end of the week, 4:30 in the afternoon, as is our custom, the Intelligence Community Roundtable with Larry Johnson.
In Los Angeles, Dallas, Texas, Austin, Texas, Baltimore, Hartford, Connecticut, Syracuse, Atlantic City, Levittown, Cohoes, New York, and Providence, Rhode Island. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets. Again, what these confirmation hearings have been showing is how corrupt your government is. Not Tulsi, not RFK, not Kash Patel, but how corrupt the senators are. You know, the people who are elected for 6 years. So here she goes. Here's her opening statement.
I'm honored and grateful to President Trump for his trust and confidence in nominating me to serve our country as the Director of National Intelligence at a time when trust in the intelligence community, unfortunately, is at an all-time low. Chuck Schumer admitted a few years ago, quote, "You take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you."
And I'm going to take credit for popularizing that clip. Everybody always quotes that clip now because I was the one who started showing it. And why do you got to brag like that? Because if I don't tell you, nobody else will. Okay. Thank you.
Guess what, buddy? You're going to be on your 5th way from Sunday pretty soon.
That's right.
Thanks.
I'm on my 5th way. So anyway.
For too long, faulty, inadequate, or weaponized intelligence have led to costly failures and the undermining of our national security and God-given freedoms enshrined in the Constitution. The most obvious example of one of these failures is our invasion of Iraq based upon a total fabrication or complete failure of intelligence.
Oh.
This disastrous decision led to the deaths of tens of thousands of American soldiers.
Oh, yeah, people. So I love that. So she's letting you know that, hey, we all agree that our intelligence community completely lied to us about Iraq. Just so you know. So they're not sacrosanct, which is what the senators want people to believe.
Salute, fam.
There's millions of people in the Middle East, mass migration, destabilization, and undermining of the security and stability of our European allies, the rise of ISIS, strengthening of Al-Qaeda and other Islamist jihadist groups, and strengthening Iran. Here are just a few other examples. The American people elected Donald Trump as their president not once but twice, and yet the FBI and intelligence agencies were politicized by his opponents to undermine his presidency and falsely portray him as a puppet of Putin. Title I of FISA was used illegally to obtain a warrant to spy on Trump campaign advisor Carter Page, using a Clinton campaign-funded false dossier as their so-called evidence.
So she's laying out all the lies and crimes in recent history that the intelligence community has committed. They lied to the FISA court 17 times so they could put a tap on Donald Trump's phone and everybody in his campaign's phone.
Well, that's a lot of effort I mean, the only failure on the intelligence community's part I can think of like lamer than this is the 600 attempts on Castro.
Yeah.
Losers.
Biden campaign advisor Tony Blinken was the impetus for the 51 former senior intelligence officials' letter dismissing Hunter Biden's laptop as disinformation specifically to help Biden win the election.
Oh, yeah. Even more recent. 51 CIA guys said that Hunter Biden's laptop was some kind of Russian op instead of what it was.
Earmarks. I thought I saw some earmarks.
It had all the hallmarks.
Yeah, a Russian information dump. Russia could have pooped that information to us. You don't know.
Former DNI James Clapper lied to this committee in 2013, denying the existence of programs that facilitated the mass collection of millions of Americans' phone and internet records.
Do you remember that? You remember when James Clapper went in front of Congress and they asked him, "Do you collect data, mass data on the?" He said, "No, we don't." Not wittingly.
Yeah.
And that was a lie.
Oh, by the way, all the stupid spy movies everybody loves, that was to imprint in your subconscious that it's good these people are there, unaccountable to anyone. Because
Yes.
governments are stupid. Remember MIB, they explain to Will Smith, the great Will Smith, they go, we have to be above the government because they're so dumb, and the people because they're too stupid. Just an uncommon Will Smith mind.
Never held accountable. Under John Brennan's leadership, the CIA abused its power to spy on Congress, to dodge oversight, lied about doing it until he was caught, and yet has never been held responsible. Under Biden, the FBI abused its power for political reasons to try to surveil Catholics who attend traditional Latin Mass, labeling them as quote-unquote radical traditionalist Catholics. Personally, just 24 hours after I criticized Kamala Harris and her nomination, I was placed on a secret domestic terror watch list called Quiet Skies. Sadly, there are more examples. The bottom line is this must end. President Trump's re-election is a clear mandate from the American people to break this cycle of failure, end the weaponization and politicization of the intelligence community, and begin to restore trust in those who've been charged with the critical task of securing our nation.
Well, well said.
I like that she looks like X-Men right there. Like it looks like I'm watching X-Men too. She looks like a powerful mutant leader with one white streak and a white costume.
I like that. She's wearing white in January. It's a lot of balls. I think she pulls it off. She makes about as much sense as anyone who still uses the word Islamist could possibly accomplish.
I like Mohammedan myself.
There's so many great things about Tulsi. She's like the love of your dreams, except for the fact that she farts and snores and when she's sleeping. You know what I mean? It's like one of those.
What? That's what I'm into, Jimmy. Don't put a nickel in my back with that.
But she's great analyst like that right there. And she's going to go on and do. She says things that nobody else in government will say. So that's why I've always admired Tulsi. Always liked her a lot. And yeah, she's flawed, just like all people are flawed, and especially people in government. But she's the best we got.
For this job at the moment, yeah, I would say so.
For this job at the moment, there's nobody I would want in this job besides her. Former Representative Tulsi Gabbard told the Senate Intelligence Committee she would end politicization of the Intelligence Committee and rebuild trust through transparency if confirmed as Director of the National Intelligence, as she seeks to quell wide-ranging concerns about her foreign travel, statements about Russia war and Ukraine. Okay. So, by the way, trust through transparency. What's amazing to me... Anyway, who cares? Why isn't this working? This isn't working. Uh-oh. Oh, now it is. But senators of both parties questioned Gabbard, one of Trump's most embattled cabinet picks, on her history of defending Russian President Vladimir Putin, her praise of National Security Agency contractor Edward Snowden, who shared sensitive... Okay, so yeah, I mean, those... Again, they're attacking her for the good things she does. That's the same thing with RFK. They attacked him for suing big pharma companies and winning. They attacked them for the good things, not the bad things. They agree with her on all the bad things. Max Blumenthal says, for the first time, a national U.S. audience heard about one of the greatest national security scandals in the 21st century, as Tulsi Gabbard details the CIA's op Timber Sycamore, which armed the organization responsible for 9/11. and ultimately was placed in power in Syria. So nobody else. This is the Democratic Party. They throw you under the bus for everything you got right. Here we go. Watch this.
Senator Kelly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Colonel Gabbard, when Russia was denying us use of chemical weapons, they accused the U.S. of supporting terrorists. This is a line that Putin used frequently during the Syrian civil war as he supported Assad. Syrian officials made similar.
So now what this guy is doing is lying and attacking someone for being honest and truthful. So this is he an astronaut? Should have stayed up.
That's what that is?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
He's an actor.
I think he was an astronaut. I could be wrong.
Comments, they did it repeatedly. They did it in public. They did it at the United Nations. In 2016, you gave an interview in which you said, and this is a quote, the U.S. is providing direct and indirect support to terrorist groups in order to overthrow the Syrian government.
And you know why she said that, asshole? Because they did. Because the United States gave money to Al-Qaeda, al-Nusra, ISIS. That's why. You know why? That's why. And he's making her pay a price for telling the truth to the American people about what their government actually did. And
is he not
doing.
briefed on WikiLeaks himself?
And in 2019, on the Democratic presidential debate stage, you said of President Trump, this is a quote, this current president is continuing to betray us. We were supposed to be going after Al-Qaeda, but over years now, not only have we not gone after Al-Qaeda, our president is supporting Al-Qaeda. So I'm interested to hear, what was your goal in saying these things? And did you consider, before saying them, the motives of Iran and Russia, what their motives might have been before making these claims?
Senator, as someone who enlisted in the military specifically because of Al-Qaeda's terrorist attack on 9/11 and committing myself and my life to doing what I could to defeat these terrorists, it was shocking and a betrayal to me and every person who was killed on 9/11, their families and my brothers and sisters in uniform. When as a member of Congress, I learned about President Obama's dual programs that he had begun really to overthrow the regime of Syria and being willing to, through the CIA's Sycamore program that has now been made public, of working with and arming and equipping Al-Qaeda in an effort to overthrow that regime.
You could even go at this point, you can even go to Wikipedia and they'll even tell you what Sycamore is.
Oh, CIA had to put it on Wikipedia because it was so known.
It's so
all those things, those guys going, oh.
Yes. So Sycamore was the program that Barack Obama directed the CIA to go fund Al-Qaeda, the people who attacked us on 9/11, fund them so that they could overthrow Assad. Why? So we can put it so that Saudi Arabia and Qatar could put a pipeline through. That's what it's really about. And Israel wants to take parts of Syria, which they have. So there's two reasons. So it's an oil pipeline, and it was Syria, and it was Israel. And so Barack Obama gave money to Al-Qaeda. It's called Sycamore. Look it up. And so she's now spanking the shit out of the astronaut and telling him the truth that he already knows.
Yeah, more like a head up his astronaut.
Yeah, that's right.
Starting yet another regime change war in the Middle East. DoD train and equip program, again, begun under President Obama, is widely been known, looked at and studied, that ultimately resulted in over $500 million being used to train who they called moderate rebels, but were actually fighters working with and aligned with Al-Qaeda's affiliate on the ground in Syria, all to move forward with their regime change and not acknowledging what was obvious at the time and what has unfortunately borne true, which was that a regime change war in Syria, much like the regime change wars in Iraq, the toppling of Gaddafi and Mubarak, while these are all dictators, would likely result in the rise of Islamist extremists like Al-Qaeda taking power. I shed no tears for the fall of the Assad.
So she just said that when you get rid of, if you fund Al-Qaeda in Syria and they topple Assad, guess who's going to take over? Al-Qaeda. Just like when we got rid of Gaddafi. Guess who's going to take over? Terrorists. It's now a terrorist state.
Yeah.
And she was the one who told the truth about it. And now they got an astronaut to smear her at a Senate hearing about it on television. Fantastic. That's how corrupt your government is.
Hey, I thought we were against Islamists, but I guess they're cool sometimes.
No. Sometimes they love Islamists.
regime. But today we have an Islamist extremist who is now in charge of Syria, as I said, who danced on the streets to celebrate the 9/11 attack, who ruled over Idlib with an Islamist extremist governance.
And so now Al-Qaeda is running Syria.
It's on the record.
Hooray!
It's on the record.
Congratulations.
Oh,
Have you ever tried to tell your friends that, Kurt?
All the time.
And how do they take it?
I don't know. They just kind of blank out.
Just
people take it like, what? I don't, it's like that.
And who has
I wrote that
already
joke for
begun to
Rob Schneider.
persecute.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. What?
I wrote that joke for Rob Schneider to do, and that one, the crowd at Turning Point USA all was like, what?
Yeah, I know.
They liked all the others. They didn't, that one went like over their head. I have no idea.
And kill and arrest religious minorities like Christians in Syria.
I understand.
Why that should be acceptable to anyone is beyond me.
It should
is
be.
certainly
And I
not in our
understand,
place.
I appreciate your answer, and thank you. My concern has to do with the tendency to repeat Russian.
That's a tendency for you to tell the truth like you just did.
Oh,
I'm
shit.
supposed to
Well,
oppose you because I'm a Democrat. I'm supposed to oppose you. I'm supposed to oppose you for telling the truth about our foreign policy because we're in the pocket of the military-industrial complex in Wall Street. Okay? So that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to represent my people. I'm not going to do anything that has integrity or dignity. I'm going to sit here and mislead the people and slander a truth teller. Someone who's currently a colonel in the military.
You should never tell the truth if it in any way could help Russia.
That's
the
right.
Truth being that's just called
Syrian,
basic law.
and even in some cases, I think we'll get into in the closed session, Iranian information, and to discount what comes from our intelligence community.
Senator, every American deserves to know that people in our own government were providing support to our sworn enemy, Al-Qaeda. That should not be acceptable by anyone.
Thank you.
Bam!
Oh, wait till that JFK report comes out, you bald prick.
Bam!
I can't wait for
Boy,
that JFK.
wow. Being back on Earth has not been kind to him. Must be the gravity.
Yeah.
So just
in space, lies are weightless.
And by the way, the media never talk. The corporate media almost never mentions Timber Sycamore, which was the program, the CIA, that was what it was called, to fund terrorists, Al-Qaeda, who attacked us on 9/11 in Syria. It was called Timber Sycamore. This is how captured the mainstream media and the tech industry is. Not a single article today about Timber Sycamore. They refuse to report on it. And only the great Jeffrey Sachs keeps shouting this modern Iran-Contra affair story. How U.S. and Israel destroyed Syria and called it peace. There's Jeffrey Sachs telling you the truth about it. But the corporate media, nobody will tell you about it. Nobody will tell you about that. Oh, yeah, we actually got in bed with Al-Qaeda in Syria to overthrow Assad. Yeah. And they'll never tell you the truth about why. They'll never tell you why. Because of an oil pipeline, and so we can give more land to Israel. That's what it was all about. That's why they had to demonize Assad. That's why they funded Al-Qaeda. That's why they're smearing Tulsi Gabbard. And that's why they smeared me. CNN still says I'm a conspiracy theorist because I told you the truth about the gas attacks. There's more. Watch Senator Mark Kelly try to challenge Tulsi Gabbard on the issue of Syria chemical weapons allegations. Note that when she twice invokes the OPCW whistleblowers, Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. That's what OPCW stands for. They did a report on the chemical attacks in Syria, and then when the official report came out, it didn't look anything like the evidence. And so the guys who were actually on the ground said, hey, they doctored this report. And they're called OPCW whistleblowers. And they told you the truth.
Yo, this guy's a scumbag, dude. He's the one that replaced Kristen Sinema.
Yeah, this guy's a scumbag. The astronaut's a scumbag.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here we go. I'm pretty sure his wife was the one, Gabby Giffords, who got shot in the head, which makes him sympathetic.
Can you explain to me then why you doubted the intelligence community's conclusions in these two cases, Duma and Kanche Kun, but not the others? And please be specific.
These two cases were being looked at to be used as a pretext for major military movement. And my fear was a repeat of the deployment of another 500,000 soldiers like we saw in Iraq towards what was the Obama administration's goal, which was regime change in Syria. The question specifically that I raised around these two came about because there were two reasons. One, that assessment was made with high confidence and low information. The information that they had came from those on the ground in an al-Qaeda controlled area and therefore were al-Qaeda linked sources. And there was conflicting information that came from the UN's Office on the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons Inspectors, as well as an MIT professor, Ted Postel,
I
who
want to
looked
talk
at
about him
these
for a second.
extensively.
So she's saying the reason why I said these two gas attacks, I questioned them, the official narrative of them, is because the information we got, came from Al-Qaeda, and whistleblowers at the OPCW told us also this MIT professor. That's why.
Did you look into his credentials, yes or no?
Yes.
And were you aware of his appearances on Russian Today, which is used by the Russians to disseminate government-approved messages?
No.
Were you aware Postal relied on a chemistry student with a record of defending the Assad regime?
At that time, I was not. I have been made aware since.
Do you consider this person or these two individuals now, do you consider them a better source for the chemistry of sarin gas than the U.S. intelligence community?
I assess that at the time, the information, I don't know the second person you're referring to, but MIT professor Ted Postel and the inspectors of the OPCW provided some credible questions that deserved examination.
Okay, thank you. Did you attempt to weigh Postal's claims against the significant evidence and assessments already conducted by the IC?
Yes, I did.
Okay, thank you. So here's my concern here, Colonel. When we began this, you described a thoughtful approach to analyzing intelligence and reaching conclusions. This is what we expect of our professionals. But we just kind of walked through how you came to question Assad's use of chemical weapons in these two cases with a different approach. And I don't reject seeking out differing viewpoints. We need to do that. But you started from a place of doubting the conclusions of the U.S. intelligence community, and then you sought out information.
Which is a great place to start. You want to start by doubting what the CIA is telling you. That's a great place to start. And he's making her seem like, why aren't you a better person? How dare you question the CIA?
That confirmed your viewpoint. That led you to embrace the opinions of two individuals that I think we disagree on this. You think they had expertise, I do not, and others do not.
And he's completely ignoring the fact that she's talking about the whistleblowers from the OPCW. He's completely ignoring. She talked about it twice. He's focusing in on Ted Postal and some other guy we don't know who it is.
But these individuals were sympathetic to Russia and the Assad regime. It also led you to minimize or discount the overwhelmingly information that contradicted your viewpoint, including the expert assessments of our own intelligence community. And they don't get it right 100% of the time. I get that. But what I have seen makes it clear that at the same time that you were skeptical of our intelligence community's assessments, you would not apply the same skepticism to information that came from sympathizers of Russia and Assad. And I think that's something that we should all be concerned about. Thank you.
Yeah, well, both Russia and Assad are more trustworthy than the intelligence community. Right. You bald prick. You absolute twat. You could trust Putin more than anyone in the CIA, you bald egg asshole. Wow, what a fuck he is.
So here's a guy who knows something about Syrian gas attacks, Aaron Mate. He says, for the first time in a U.S. government setting, the OPCW whistleblowers who challenged the cover-up of their chemical weapons investigation in Douma, Syria, were mentioned today. Tulsi Gabbard twice invoked them in response to Senator Mark Kelly's efforts to challenge her skepticism on specific allegations that Assad's forces used chemical weapons. The whistleblowers have been smeared by the OPCW, but never refuted. The establishment media has also pretended that they don't exist, just like Mark Kelly, just like that senator, bald astronaut, just pretended they don't exist. He wouldn't even acknowledge them because their censored findings undermine a key pro-war narrative. That's why.
I want a Timber Sycamore t-shirt that says Timber Sycamore on it. Or like hashtag Timber Sycamore, just that. No explanation, just Timber Sycamore, like it's a brand, like Timberland. And I want to wear it everywhere.
So if you want to know what really happened in Syria and why, people like Senator Mark Kelly will never tell you. The New York Times will never tell you. The Washington Post will never tell you. MSNBC, CNN, Fox, they'll never tell you. You know who will tell you? Tulsi Gabbard just told you. This show will tell you. We were on it first, debunking the gas attacks in Syria. Aaron Mate was on it and is still on it. You're not going to hear this. You're not going to hear it from the Young Turks. You're not going to hear it from people who have MSNBC contracts. You're not going to hear it on MSNBC, CNN, Fox News, New York Times, Washington Post. You're not going to hear it. You're not going to hear the truth about Syria. So that's the truth. The truth is we were funding Al-Qaeda, the terrorists who attacked us on 9/11, to overthrow Assad so we could put a oil pipeline through there and give part of it to Israel. And now Al-Qaeda is running Syria. Are you happy? Al-Qaeda is. Al-Qaeda.
Well, is Russia happy? Then I'll tell you if I'm happy. How does Russia feel about it?
Hey, we're doing stand-up comedy in Los Angeles, Dallas, Texas, Austin, Texas, Baltimore.
Lately, I have seen a lot of videos of black people making fun of Mexicans for what's happening right now with Mexican people.
No, fam, it's undocumented migrants. There's a lot of names for it. I'm trying to be nice, okay? But it's not every Mexican. It's not Mexican people. It's a subsection of people that are not just Mexican. It's Nigerians, it's Haitians, it's Hondurans, it's Guatemalans, it's Asian. I say Asian, it's Ukrainians, it's Lithuanians. It's all types of people that are undocumented, okay? It's not just you. But, of course, hit dog holler. This guy's going to get totally disagreeable. The racism's going to come out.
People make videos talking about Mexicans. Don't come to us for help because we're not helping. First of all, Mexicans are not alone. They have Honduran people, they have Salvadorian people, they have Guatemalan people, they have Nicaraguan people, and a whole bunch of other countries that are willing to join forces with the Mexican people.
Won't they take you in then, since you need to go to a country where you can be productive, make money, build your families? Once you go to some of those countries you just listed. You'll know why I say that, because of, in just a moment, you'll get a full picture of why I'm saying that. But this guy says, hey, man, we got all the backup. We got all the people. Well, then, why are you here illegally? I don't get it. Black people didn't get a choice when we got brought to America. We tried to run. We tried to get off the boat. We tried to run away when we was enslaved. Some of us made it. What's your excuse? So he brags about all the people he got with him, all the people Mexican people had with him. And then he goes and he keeps talking. It gets way worse.
Black people, what makes you think that Mexicans are going to come running to y'all for help? What for? Y'all black people can't even help yourselves.
Hey, since we can't help ourselves. See, this is exactly what I've been talking about, folks, about how they don't respect the civil rights movement. They come here, they enjoy it, they use it to their benefit. They love moving into apartment places, buildings, homes that they would not, before civil rights, they would never be allowed into. They come take advantage of all the blood, sweat, and tears, literal blood, sweat, and tears of Black Americans in this country. They don't even go through the process of going legally. And then what do? Take a big dump on us. Because he got a couple videos popped up on his timeline.
That's wild. Mexican people are hardworking people. Mexican people stick together.
There you go. Once again, since Mexican people stick together, Once I'm saying, why leave Mexico? Stick together. Now, I know some people are going to think this is harsh. Good. All I'm saying is, if you want to make a video bragging about how badly you stick together, maybe you should not be making the video on the pretext that you're trying to immigrate into another country. Mexico's a country. Since you stick together, how about sticking together in Mexico? Or if you're going to go to another country, go through the process like many other millions of all types of people, including Mexicans, had to go through the process. It's not like it's a process for you that doesn't apply to anybody else. It's not like they're like, all the Asians can come in undocumented. You don't need paperwork. You don't need to be a citizen. They run a red light. They get caught in a shopping store or whatever, in a store shoplifting. They're going to go through the same thing you go through. It's not like the police ICE be like, oh, he's Latino and this was Asian. They'd be like, who's undocumented? So anyway, let's keep going.
They make it work. That's the total opposite of a black person.
There comes the racism. Yeah, we don't make it work. Somehow, we was able to survive America and still be here. We survived hundreds of years of slavery, 100 years of Jim Crow, whatever we're into now, people call it Jane Crow, without you guys. And now here you come telling us we don't know how to make it work, but you do. Make it work in Mexico. See, all those people that get butthurt when I talk about this stuff, remember this guy. Remember him. Remember what he said. And then multiply him by all the black people that got to listen to this guy. This guy and people just like him in America talking to black Americans while sitting in America undocumented. Think about it.
You want to call me racist? Go right ahead.
Hey, he doesn't even care if you think he's racist. He's fine with it. He's the guy that works somewhere doing something. He's just keeping it real.
I'm just keeping it real.
Yeah, real racist. He's just keeping it real racist. I love it. I love it. I just keep it real.
Go right ahead. I'm just keeping it real. Like I said, Mexican people are not alone. They have all of us. What makes you think that a Mexican will say, oh, okay, well, we have the blacks. Let's go to them. Come on now.
There you go. Perfect. You're not coming to us. So why are you making a video to us? I don't understand. You don't need us. You said we're worthless. We can't help you. You got help from El Salvadorians. But somehow you're in a country that I built, my family, my ancestors built for free against their will. You're like, I guess I'll just pull up in my Pinto, in my car trucking. What's them cars with look like a car and a truck smashed together? I'm gonna pull up in that and talk smack about everybody black. He's gonna end on a high note too.
Y'all don't even trust each other. What makes you think that a Mexican will trust you if you don't even trust your brother?
You trust MS-13? Y'all got some gangs. You trust them? You trust the gangs that are in Mexico, cartels, cutting people's heads off? I mean, it's a lot of different types of Mexicans. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a lot of people doing some things. So, like, yeah, I don't trust everybody. I don't trust people just because they look a certain color. No, that's crazy talk. I've lived a lot of places. Anybody will get you if you slip it. White, black, Latino, Asian, West Indian, like, it don't matter, man. You ain't been in America long, have you?
Get your popcorn ready and watch how Mexicans make this work.
Listen to this guy. They gonna make it work. I love this. I love it. Make this shirt. Make this shirt be ironed. How about that? How about you know what? I'm not even gonna get petty. Here's the deal, son. You feel in a certain kind of way. It's not a good idea to poke the dragon. You're in here poking the dragon, sir. You're in here playing games with the alligator's nostrils. Then when he gets your whole damn arm, all the way up to his shoulder blade in his mouth, then you want to cry, mommy, papi. See, that's not gonna work. Next, I bet you by next week, he'll have a video complaining about all the negative backlash that the blacks have given him.
It's live on tour be in Los Angeles, Dallas, Texas, Austin, Baltimore, Hartford, Syracuse, Atlantic City, Cohoes, New York, and Providence, Rhode Island. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets. So now, because the word is out and everybody's scared that the ICE is coming for everybody, they're not showing up to work.
Oh, look, all the jobs.
So
those guys did want their jobs. This is years ago I saw them. We did a pilot for Comedy Central, upstate New York, family-owned construction company. All the work was going away because these companies would hire illegals to do it. They explained it very patiently. Nobody for some reason respects that.
I saw a video today. I can't believe I didn't grab it for the show, but there is a bakery in Central Illinois, and the guy says there's 3 factories here, and the parking lot's full, and we're at shift change right now, and it's empty. And so now you're not going to be. There's going to be a shortage in bread. There's going to be a shortage of whatever they bake there.
I bet you better start hiring.
Because they're hiring illegal immigrants. Why? Because that's good for business. You could pay them less. They can't organize. They can't form a union because they're not here legally. And so that's a gift to corporations. And the people that they can't bring in illegally, they give an H-1B visa to, just as what Joe Biden did for truck drivers. So now truck driving companies are importing foreign workers to drive trucks because there aren't enough truck drivers in America. There aren't enough talented people talented enough to drive trucks in America. No, it's to drive wages down.
Yeah, well, Jimmy, it's even if you're a company that isn't that big of a scumbag, the government was purposely funding programs to make you do that.
That's right.
You see how much worse that is? That's actively trying to destroy you.
So to the extent at which the American worker has been replaced by cheap illegal migrant labor is shocking. This job site employee is reporting only 8 out of 43 workers showed up for work due to immigration checkpoints and raids. This is where all our jobs have gone, to illegal. So I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that is why, as Bernie Sanders said in 2014, before he got the woke mind virus, that open borders is a billionaire scheme. He called it a Koch brothers scheme. It's to drive wages down and undermine unions.
Because it is. It was a Republican invention, the sanctuary city. They love that idea. And that's why it was a Koch brother. Here, if you're a dumb shit liberal, hold Koch brothers are bad in your head. And now remember that that's their thing they want. Imbeciles.
So here's
you have to qualify this.
So there's the construction site. 8 out of 43 guys showed up for work due to the immigration checkpoints and raids.
Of course. Were people going to not go for the cheaper labor option, especially a company? If I run an NGO, right? Like the Open Society, I'm part of the Good Club with Bill Gates and Oprah, and we're thinking ways to get you down to eating bugs or whatever the hell. That's how you do it. The buses of illegal military-age men coming in, that was a Catholic NGO. Okay, so this isn't just like people sneaking in for a better life. This was on purpose. That's why they're being so fast getting criminals out, because they purposely let them in.
Hey guys, so if y'all think that the people are fear-mongering about food and our communities running out of food and there being a big balloon and there being economic problems, this is in Central Illinois. This factory, which is next door to my home, is the Bimbo Bakery factory, and next door to it is 2 more factories, and then across the street is another factory. This parking lot should be full. His factory runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It is 5:30.
And that exhaust there is just ventilation.
That's just the ventilation. This would typically
There should
be full.
there should be a huge smoke column somewhere right around here going that way with the production oven.
And if you look at that parking lot, it is empty. This is shift change. It is the middle of shift change. And the entrance to the parking lot is right there. And this is our only street in and out of town to get over there. And as you can see, there are no cars. So this is our bakery, Bimbo Bakery. They make things like the English muffins. So expect there to be a fucking problem when it comes down to our food in the next upcoming months.
Oh no, the slaves aren't there. How will I get my food?
So the same people who scream about raising the minimum wage, and I'm one of those people. I'm all for raising the minimum wage. You know me, I'm a lefty. Because the minimum rate, when you raise the minimum wage, it actually helps the economy. People think it does the opposite. It forces people out of business. It doesn't. It actually has the opposite.
I figured it out, Jimmy, 20 years ago when every time they had this argument and raised it, it was fine. That's when I put it together.
Yeah. Every time they raise the minimum wage, actually, I know the president of Wetzel Pretzels said, yeah, I used to be against it. He goes, but now every time they do it, my business goes up. Yeah, because people have more money in their pockets and it increases. So anyway, it's actually not bad for the economy. So I'm for that. But the same people, so a lot of those same people, not me, a lot of the same people who scream you got to raise the minimum wage also are upset that we don't have enough slave labor. They're like, oh my God, who's going to pick your fruit? Who's going to remember Ozzy Osbourne's daughter? Who's going to clean your toilets? Who's going to do this? So
she sounded like an Episcopalian lesbian bishop talking to Trump.
Yeah. So you want
Please don't free the slaves.
So you want people here who are vulnerable to the capitalists. And you want them here so they can be exploited. But at the same time, you want to raise the minimum wage. But you're upset that someone's getting rid of the people who are being exploited. Because that's what that is. Why do you think they're hiring only illegal aliens? Because they're being exploited.
If it causes an English muffin shortage, shouldn't that tell you, wow, the scale of the utter corruption and problem is so big, we're not going to have English muffins for a few weeks. That must be a really big problem. I'm glad it's getting taken care of. That guy Bukele did it, and their GDP, which is not even the thing that I would hinge everything on, went up from doing that.
But and this person makes a great point. The argument will always be Americans don't want to do this work. Really? Factory work in a bakery? Construction jobs? Americans don't want to do those jobs? Working in slaughterhouses? Really? Meat packing? They don't want to work there? Really?
How do we build anything in this country before we... All the people got there like, I don't want to do any of the jobs. You mean they want to be paid properly?
So this person says, no, it's that Americans don't want to work for a third of what their grandparents earned in real dollars in their own country. Is that wrong?
Jimmy, I want to just point this out.
That has 3,000 likes.
Do you know how bad things have gotten? Here's the thing that really hit home for me, how bad things got when I was watching the Bill Burr and Billy Pumpkin's brother get together. And I went, my God, back in the day, you could be a guy who has a wife and family in a house and then go get another secret wife and family in another house.
Yes.
And supported by being a traveling musician. That's how far now no one can have any house.
Right.
You ever hear anybody going to jail for bigamy ever?
Yeah.
My girlfriend never even heard of that term.
Blue collar people having 2 families, secret. So
like here's CIA, they got 2 families. No one can afford to do that.
Bimbo owns Hostess, Sara Lee, and Entenmann's. So that, remember she said this is Bimbo Bakery? Bimbo owns Hostess, Sara Lee, and Entenmann's as well. How much of the labor force has been illegal immigrants all this time?
Yeah. Yeah.
These businesses need to be prosecuted. This is not an accident. They lobby to keep immigration work visas scarce so that they have a cheap and compliant workforce that can't organize.
Okay, Purdue, they paid Purdue to do this, recall, with tax incentives to fire the American workforce and bring in illegals less money. That was incentivized by the government to them. So the way a business views that is, I have to do it, much like the H-1B thing. Well, you have to do it. You cannot do it because it's business now. So the state is doing that on purpose. They're creating perverse incentives for gain of function research, replacing the jobs, all kinds of crazy shit.
So
Killer AI.
I love this is not an accident. They lobby to keep immigration work visas scarce so that they have a cheap and compliant workforce they can compel through fear. Shame on anyone who wants to keep this system in place. Revise the laws. Yes, but do not say we need to support human trafficking in order to preserve our junk food habits.
So the cocaine I did back in the early 2000s was more humane and fair trade than any Twinkies. Is what I'm picking up from this.
So I'm pro-immigration. I'm pro-immigrant. Nobody wants to kick anybody out of this country who's been here for 20 years and raised a family and provided for their kids. That's not what this is about. This is about in the last few years, they have flooded this country because the labor market got tight and unions started to catch on. Amazon was able to organize a union. People at Starbucks were able to form a union. That's what this is about. They're afraid of American workers getting power. In the middle of the biggest income disparity in the world, Jeff Bezos has a yacht bigger than a football field. So does Mark Zuckerberg. Bigger than a football field. These people who lecture you about climate change have yachts with 4 gigantic diesel engines in them. A yacht. You know, Mark, Jeff Bezos' yacht is so big, it comes with a support yacht. That's a fact. Look it up.
How many immigrants does it hold?
Right. So this idea that these are only jobs Americans will do any job. I worked construction. I worked brickwork. There's very few jobs harder than that. I was in Chicago, 100-degree heat, 90% humidity on top of a building, had to carry buckets of brick and cement up 4 or 5 flights of stairs it was not easy.
Yeah, but they pay you.
But they paid me. And the people I worked with, bricklayers and tuck pointers, they all got paid. They got paid enough to buy a house and have kids. And even some of them, if they worked on the weekends doing side jobs, they could afford a summer home on a lake in Wisconsin. But they worked their ass off every day. I grew up in a time when blue collar workers owned summer homes on a lake in Wisconsin, and they had speedboats, and we'd go up to their house. Regular blue collar people, because they worked every day of their fucking lives. But now that became too expensive. And so the capitalists, the corporations, like, no, we got to. And so that's what this is all about. That's what this is all about. And so I don't know how the same people who scream we got to raise the minimum wage could also scream that, well, we can't get rid of the most vulnerable exploited labor. We got to have slave labor.
Yeah, someone's going to exploit them. We might as well have Twinkies. See, here's the thing with the hit to the economy is like, oh, the Twinkies are gone, but American jobs aren't being lost, are they? Those were never American jobs, it turns out.
Right.
So, like, watch that Bukele speech. It's great because they were like, no, you can't just do that. And he said, we'll take the hit just to get rid of the corruption. And everybody seems to be happy with him that I've ever met from El Salvador.
So when he's saying that he's talking about the president of El Salvador, the average person's finding it.
Here's a clip I'd like to share with you. With my good friend Donna Brazil, just joking, not my friend. She gave me palm tree level shade last time I saw her.
Former DNC Chair Donna Brazil, former RNC Chair and Trump White House Chief of Staff Ryan Priebus. Thank you both for joining us this morning. Donna, let me begin with you. That call from President Trump blaming the crash perhaps on diversity initiatives was echoed by other members of his cabinet. Your reaction?
Well, as you well know, George, politics has no place
no place whatsoever at a crash scene, especially this tragedy. At a time like this, we want a president to help us mourn and grieve, to show compassion, to comfort those who are right now just trying to figure things out.
Yeah, we don't want nobody to talk about what caused the crash. Last thing we want is people talking about what happened. Why would we want to know how it happened? Yeah, you know, well, why would we be concerned with causes? Just had one of the most horrific plane crashes in the last 50 years, right? And you don't want them to talk about like what may have caused it? Now, don't get me wrong. I don't think Trump should have said DEI in this conversation at all, if he wasn't going to be very specific. Because all it does is open up a lane for Donald Brazil and other Democrats to come out here and say he meant black. But his answer did not mean black. Hell, man, only like 3% of people in aviation are black. Okay, so there ain't no black people in aviation like that. I think it's like 2%. And by the way, when you watch TV and you see Denzel flying planes and shit, that's Hollywood. And when you see, you know, for the record, when you watch the movie and you see black professionals and all these jobs, every other movie has a black person leading a law firm or black woman working at the top of a law firm or top position or whatever. Be recognized, that's Hollywood. They wanted to do that because they like giving a facade of inclusion for black Americans. But that's bullshit. Only like 2% of male doctors are black. Only 2% of female lawyers are black women. You understand what I'm saying? So it's all bullshit. So when Trump said DEI, he wasn't talking about you in relation to aviation, because there's not enough of us in it. Everything is not black versus white. And there's some things that are black versus white. Okay? That time Mike Tyson knocked out that white boy, he beat the shit out. That was black versus white. Okay? Paul McCartney, Michael Jackson, Ebony Ivory, black versus white. There are a lot of things black versus white, but not this. Okay? Not this at all. And also, let me also say this. I watched the entire press conference. I'm betting 98% of people that talk about this issue, about the press conference after the crash, the DC crash of the airliner versus the Black Hawk helicopter, they didn't watch the entire press conference. Trump distinctly said he felt the problem was the Black Hawk helicopter pilot.
What you did have is you had vision. The helicopter had vision of the plane, because you had vision of it all the way, perfect vision of it all the way from at Kennedy Center where the tape was taken. And for some reason, there weren't adjustments made. Again, you could have slowed down the helicopter substantially. You could have stopped the helicopter. You could have gone up. You could have gone down. You could have gone straight up, straight down. You could have turned. You could have done a million different maneuvers. For some reason, it just kept going and then made a slight turn at the very end, and by that time it was too late.
He talked for 45 minutes, and anybody knows Trump he only about 15% of what he says is germane to the conversation. The rest is just him spitballing and freestyling. He go up once he looks away at his teleprompter, he liable to say anything. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. But what I'm saying is, he distinctly said he felt it was the helicopter pilot that was in error. He thought it was a line of sight. You should have been able to see that airliner in front of you. It does not mean he is Saint Trump. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. He is not a saint. Okay? But our media is much worse, and the Democratic Party is worse than Trump. Okay? Worse. It was very refreshing to hear a president be as direct as Trump was, and to speak about a crash and talk like a person, like a human being, unlike Biden. We just had a corpse as a president who would come out and say nothing. Zero. Bunch of bullshit. So I still enjoyed Trump's press conference on regarding the crash much more than I'm sure I would have enjoyed. And as far as enjoy, felt that the sentiments were real. And other than him throwing in the DEI shit, a couple petty shots at Biden I didn't think were necessary. Other than those two things, it was good.
When I heard the president, after just a few words where he talked about unity, and then he started to pivot to politics, to land this on President Obama, President Biden, and then, of course, the real appalling insult on DEI, diversity, which includes every American, women, minorities, people with disabilities.
Then why do y'all act like he's talking about black people? Why is all of this seem like it's focused on black people and against white people? Why does I want us to boycott Walmart and Target then? Why is B, what's her name, B something? Why are they trying to make us stop buying her shit? Why, if this is against everybody? If cutting DEI policies is a slight to the entire country, why do we need it? Look, listen, man. If everybody gets a gold star, let's stop giving out gold stars. I don't understand it. Like, I'm serious. If everybody gets a gold star, how does this help anybody? And if you take it away, how does it hurt anybody? If everybody is, okay, we're not going to boost anyone. We were boosting everyone. Now let's stop boosting everyone. Let's boost no one. Okay, if that's the case, how does that hurt us or help us? If you were boosting everyone, is this making any sense? Is this coming through? Is this ringing true? You understand what I'm saying? If the program was helping everyone, and if you stop the program, it helps no one. Why is corporate America and the Democrats so invested on making black people be the face of fighting this thing? What are we, your puppy dogs? Your attack dogs? Arr. That's what they want us to be. They want us to be attack dogs, Johnson. That's what you are. You are their beast of burden. You will forever be their cotton pickers. Explain it to me. Somebody break it down for me. Make it so I can understand. Make it very basic. Go ahead and throw a rock and hit one of these. Throw a rock and hit one of these liberal Democrats, and have them explain it to me. Why should I give a shit about a program that didn't benefit us, that benefited the entire country, and we're the ones on the bottom? Why should I give a shit about that program going away if we weren't really benefiting? Now to say it, if somebody come in my house, I should get them the hell out. But if somebody come in everybody's house, shouldn't everybody go get them? Or just say, hey, we got an open house one day a week. I don't know. I'm just saying, because I'm trying to understand what the argument has been. Don't make sense. It helps everybody. How do you help everybody? If this is what the policy has been under Biden for the last 4 years, why was inflation so high? Maybe because he was helping everybody. I don't know. So you mean to tell me for the last 4 years, these DEI processes have been in place, right? Why was the country in the shitter then? Why were we circling the bowl for 4 years? If that's the case, I'm just asking, Johnson, if these policies were great and they helped us, all of us, why about all of us eating hot dogs with no buns for the last one? I'm trying to understand, Johnson. You understand what I'm saying? You get what I'm going from? Well, I'm going here with this. Think. Use your brain for something than holding up a hat.
To ensure that no American is ever left behind, that we enlarge the pool of qualified individuals to work in and out of government, in the private sector. DEI is a tool that enables the government or corporations or individuals to open the door, to remove barriers, to bring in the best and the brightest This is not an attack on the American people.
Here's the deal.
This is an opportunity for every American to participate in the greatness of our great, wonderful nation. It is not about discrimination, but when you target people, when you say that people, simply because of the way they look or how they walk or who they love, are not qualified to do the jobs, it is not true. And look.
That's why they're not qualified, because of the way they look. That's why they're not qualified. I'm not sure if that's the reason why.
50, 60 years, the American people have really worked hard to ensure that no American is ever left behind, that we enlarge the pool of qualified individuals to work in and out of government, in the private sector. DEI is a tool that enables the government or corporations or individuals to open the door, to remove barriers, to bring in the best and the brightest. This is not an attack on the American people.
Here's the deal.
This is an opportunity for every American to participate in the great.
I don't get it, Johnson. Who does DEI help? It helps bring in the best people. How? How?
Greatness of our great, wonderful nation. It is not about discrimination, but when you target people, when you say that people, simply because of the way they look or how they walk or who they love, are not qualified to do the jobs, it is not true. And
she said because of how they walk or how they love. I think I know what you're talking about. Some of this is because of what people said about Kamala Harris. People are still training on the Kamala Harris loss. The Democrats are still butthurt because we didn't accept Kamala as to be the next president. You know that's what it is, right? I mean, that's really what it is. The Democrats are still stinging over the laws they took. Kamala Harris should have never been vice president, let alone the president. I don't know what bullshit, like you could make up in your mind any scenario you want. But at the end of the day, Kamala Harris wasn't popular enough to win her own state. That's really why she dropped out of the race in 2020. So bearing that in mind, the fact that she was unable to become president should not shock anyone. And when you tell people, I'm a hire a black woman, and then you go hire a black woman, they could say, it seems like you only did this because she was black, because she was a black woman, because you said it. Now, you and I know she ain't a black woman. Because she is an Indian Asian woman whose father's from Jamaica. But since she got brown skin, everybody says she a black woman and she DEI. It was also because she sucked. Right now, CBS has got a lawsuit because of Donald Trump suing them over them doctoring a video interview with Kamala Harris where they tried to make her look better than she was. Where they cooked the books, they cooked the tape so she would sound coherent when she's not, to answer basic questions. She was a horrible candidate, a horrible campaigner when you consider these things. But the Democrats are so butthurt that people called her a DEI hire. Well, they could have just said, look, it wasn't just DEI. Yes, if she was that brown skinned and female, I don't think Biden would have chosen. I don't know why Democrats would have lied when they know that's the case. But the other side of it is, she was also chosen because of political reasons. She was chosen because without black women being fully on board with Joe Biden, he would never have had a chance to win. Okay? Black women strong-armed the Democratic Party. Democratic Party, they were like, look, you put Obama in there, a black woman better be coming soon. And that's what they did. But that's not just DEI, that's also politics. Biden did that as a selfish reason. He did it for his own intentions. Not just DEI is not for your own intentions. in my understanding of DEI is that for your own personal gain. That's why he did it. Not to adhere to some thing, but also that's part of it, but it was more like, I want to appease these voters who are going to come out and vote for me, and they want to see a black woman on the ticket. That's called politics. Politicians do that all the time. That's why that's why Obama went and got Biden. Brown-looking person went and got an old Confederate guy who loved blocking up black people. We got this older white guy with a sketchy past when it comes to the blacks and incarceration rates. Why? What was that? Reverse DEI? Why'd he go do that? So both sides of this are full of shit. That's what I'm trying to tell you. I think it's undeniable that both sides are full of shit. For some reason, some people don't want to accept that, but I want to clear it up for you. So the Democrats are really still pissed off about Kamala losing, and they don't know how to deal with it. So all they're doing is lashing out at this term DEI. Unfortunately, we don't have enough people that are willing to say Kamala deserved to lose because she sucked. She wasn't good enough to beat Trump. I don't think anybody on the Democratic roster was good enough to beat Trump. The Democrats are unpopular. You need to be somewhat popular in order to win if you're running as the party person. Trump is not running as a party person. Anyway, I don't want to do this. I don't want to talk anymore. Shut up, Tim. Let's keep going. Who cares?
Look, this is Black History Month. But Black History Month cannot be celebrated without talking about American history, because it's history we've all made. And that once again, we see an administration that is saying, no, we're not going to have these celebrations anymore. We're not going to acknowledge the pain and suffering, the Holocaust. This is not who we are as Americans. We are bigger than this. We want a country as good as it's promised.
Man, I want us to fix today. Yeah, man, like, look, maybe this is wrong, maybe you don't agree with this, but I really want us to fix today and the future going forward. That's really what I want. I know it's selfish, but I'm looking at Black America with the wide wealth gap between Black America and white America. I'm looking at the poverty line. I'm looking at incarceration rates. I'm looking at all these things that are happening. Yeah, I'm sure Black History Facts. Follow me on Facebook as Real Tim Black, and on X as Real Tim Black as well. But I want us to really focus on what's going on now and moving Black people forward and up, off the bottom in this country. So yeah, I get it. I get that you want to remember the past. But I don't want to just stay stuck in the past. I want us to look forward to what we're going to do going forward. And that's what it should be. And look, so, and as far as I know, Trump is not issuing any guidance to not have Black History Month. I mean, it is Black History Month. Who gives a shit what the country does? Like, I didn't give a shit if Biden made Juneteenth a holiday. Who really gives a damn? No one cared. It's Black History Month, Donna. Yay! We still on the bottom, Donna. How does that change our material condition in this country? If having Black History Month help Black people get more money, help Black people be more successful as far as being able to feed their families, if it closed the racial wealth gap, wouldn't it already be closed? Obviously, these things, I'm not saying they don't have any impact, but their impact is marginal, because look at where we are and look at all the shit that's been in place. So why would I be upset about things going away that obviously have not helped us? We need to be talking about the things we need to add to. Not be crying about things going away that are part of the things that aren't working for us. It's not working for us. It ain't working for us. Goofy. It's not. Or we already be doing better. A migrant comes into this country, if they keep their nose clean in 5 years, they have more wealth than us. What are you talking about? We need to do this, and we need to do that. We need to hold on to this, hold on to that. I can see if it was helping us. You got us holding. It's like we're in a lake. We're in the ocean. Treading water, trying to stay alive, and you want to hold a bunch of suitcases full of toys and trinkets that have nothing to do with us floating. And I'm saying, let's get a boat over here. Let's get some life jackets. And USA want to hold on to these suitcases full of clippings, news clippings that do nothing for us. Now, it's fine if you want to wax poetic and have conversations with your child. I talked to my grandparents about Black history, that's fine. But the Democratic Party needs to be focused on the damn lifeboats. Be focused on the water vest, the life-saving vest. Be focused on that shit. Because all the stuff that you, the NAACP, the Congressional Black Caucus have been focused on hasn't saved us. But that's just too real. That makes too much sense. Which really makes me question how much you guys are really concerned with actually helping Black people. Because how can I have these ideas if you not?
I believe that I agree with some of what Donna just said. I mean, a lot of it. I mean, yes, we need to give people opportunities that wouldn't have had opportunities, but we can't give people favoritism. And there's a big difference between giving, a lawyer an opportunity, because people can pick and choose whoever lawyer they want to hire. There are standards for, taking the bar exam, accreditation, and you go interview the lawyer and you hire a lawyer. But it's another thing if you're on an airplane and you have DEI initiatives that may have given preferential preference to someone sitting in a control tower.
That's not
I'm
how
not
it
saying
works.
it's true,
That's not how it works.
All I'm saying, Don, is there's a difference between opportunity, which I agree with, and favoritism. That's all we're saying.
Well, I just want to reassure the American people that flying is safe. I've been on airplanes all my adult life.
That got nothing to do with anything. It's the perception. And the Democrats are losing the perception game. You're losing the culture war, the perception game, the messaging game. You're just losing badly.
Cool figure. Follow me.